the roll call.
I'm getting there.
Getting there.
There. Mr. Anderson?
Here.
Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. LaSalle?
Here.
Mr. Mahoney?
Here.
Mr. Meyer?
Here.
And Betty and Scott informed me they wouldn't make it.
All right, everyone received the copy of the minutes, February minutes. Do we have a motion to approve?
A motion we approve the February minutes.
I'll second it.
Second. Discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So moved. Okay, well, in lieu of, we have a lot of, this is our biggest crowd I think we've ever had here at the Transportation Advisory Committee meeting, so we're pleased to have everyone. And in lieu of, just to make more time, I want to go ahead and skip the chair report. So I didn't have much to say anyway, so. All right, agenda analysis. Any additions or subtractions to the agenda?
Oh, yeah, I do. I have a couple of items. Wanted to talk about a parcel that we're moving forward with some concept design work on Gaffney Lane near the grade school there. I just wanted to bring that to the tax attention. And so there's one piece of Gaffney Lane that kind of sticks out in the middle of the roadway, and the roadway kind of goes around it. There's no pedestrian access on either side of the street there, so I'll talk more about that, but that's generally what that item is about. And we've already got the Oregon passenger rail item on here, so I don't need to add that. So.
Great. Okay. This is the time that we have public comment, and we have several here to comment, I assume, on the trolley. And so the first person to come forward would be Erica. This looks like start. I won't even try. There you go. Come on forward, yeah. And if someone else wants to come with her, that would be...
Well, I have my whole neighborhood here.
Okay,
That's
Janice
We're
Keller.
from Third Court.
Well, we'll call up two people at a time. So
Okay.
Janice Keller.
Is that fair to have the whole neighborhood come?
And then Erica, you can go first.
Okay. So what we wanted to bring to your attention, and I have some photos to share with you if you have a minute, is the intersection of Tharp Court and Glen Oak Road. We are all homeowners from Tharp Court. Almost all of us that are living down the street are here today to discuss some safety concerns that we have. First and foremost, we would like to request that there be a crosswalk put in from Tharp Court to Glen Oak. And then for you guys to review and maybe make some changes in regards to the parking situations along Glen Oak Road. We've had a number of near misses in regards to accidents, trying to pull out of our road, trying to turn on our road. The visibility with the parking on either side of Glen Oak Road really obstructs your vision, and we're really concerned for safety of our children and pedestrians in the area, and also just pulling out of our street and back home. So I have some photos to show you for examples of what that entails. These are of our street from different locations and in regards to what the visibility is. So the first few that are on here do designate what their specific concerns are, but you cannot see when you're trying to pull out right or left. I mean, almost down to the roundabout. I'm not sure if you're familiar where that
Sure,
is.
yeah.
So when you do pull out, you really can't see. You're almost halfway in the intersection with your entire car in order to even access the roadway. But by that time, if there's an oncoming car, there's been numerous cases where I've almost been hit twice, and numerous things happen as well. So you're committed at that point. You're already in an intersection. If they're there, you're going to get hit or you're not.
Okay, thanks. We'll need you to speak into this.
Sorry.
This map here
Yeah.
shows where you're talking about, so you can use a pointer to figure out.
Oh, great. Okay, so we are on Tharp Court, which is right here. And along this roadway here down Glen Oak, there's a lot of vehicles that park there. Also on the opposite side of Glen Oak, along here, there's a new housing a lot of housing put in. There's an increase in traffic. Along this area, there's lots of cars parked as well, and here. So when you're pulling out of Tharp Court, this is a hillside. So you're coming up a hillside from here. Glen Oak comes up as a hillside as well. When you're coming up Glen Oak in this region, you kind of even see that there's a street here. My biggest concern is for our children. The school is just right over here, crossing across the way. If they step out in front of a vehicle, there's no way that you will see them. You cannot see oncoming traffic coming from this direction or from this direction.
No sidewalks?
There is a sidewalk here. However, they're parking very, very close to the corner, all the way up to the corner, even obstructing our post office box, which I've already made a complaint about, and that's gotten better, but it has not fixed the situation.
It's on-street parking for the residents?
It's actually not used by any of us. It's used by the new townhome residents across the way. In this region, there's been numerous townhomes put in here and apartments that are being put back in here. There's very limited parking for them, and they're parking on the main street, which really occludes our vision. There's a stop sign from Glen Oak here and from Coast Redwood Drive here. You know, I now go the long way home because I used to cut through from here just to cut across to Glen Oak. I almost got T-boned twice doing that. And by their godsend that they hit their brakes in time, because by the time I was able to see, it was too late. I hit my brakes, but only by their good, safe driving that I was not hit. So I do not even come through there anymore. We have children. There will be soon to be 5 to 6 children in a year's time that will be walking age. And that is my biggest concern on our small street, that there's not adequate safety to protect them from being hit by a motor vehicle.
I believe the speed limit on Glen Oak is 35.
It varies. So right in our region, it's in the 35 range. Down left, down Glen Oak Road towards this area of the schooling here, it does drop down to 25, but that's during school hours.
Right.
There's a crosswalk way down there, and there is a speed bump to slow traffic. But the main problem is the visibility. You're going up a hill coming up Glen Oak Road, and you're coming up a hill to come off of our court. And so at the top of that hill, your vision is occluded right and left, and then the parking really, really obstructs that as
The
well.
photos are helpful. They really show that. So
Yeah.
you've done a thorough job.
So
Can I ask you to state your name for the
my
record?
name is Erica
Erica.
Stardig.
Wasn't very helpful there. I mean, I can't.
Do you want me to spell it for you? STARDIG.
Thank you.
Do we keep these as exhibits, or do you want them back?
Oh, you're welcome to keep them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
So this is just our street viewer. We can kick it on and it'll just progress through.
Yeah, the neighborhoods down the way here, you can see there's not really any parking there. That's just a bike lane. So that's not, but when it comes up here, it widens to allow parking. As you can see, we're just coming up onto it now. This is the main area of concern on the right and left side of Glen Oak there. So those areas are full of cars. And with the new people that are coming into those townhomes, it's a single car garage and street parking for them. And it's really turned into be making that intersection quite scary. So I will go ahead and step back at this point. If anyone else wants to speak, I know Sean wanted to make a few comments.
No, that's fine. Thank you, Kristen. Appreciate it. Erica, I'm sorry.
It's-
Yeah. Okay. Yes, we'll definitely take that under consideration and let you know, John. That's very helpful to have that street view.
Can we have a show of hands from that neighborhood? Just
Okay, great.
okay.
I see the construction people are stacking stuff up.
Those are all finished, actually. That it's you can see those homes are all the way down and all the way back and all the way to the high school now. So there is a huge amount of population increase in that very small area with very limited road access.
Okay.
The traffic has been.
Do you know if it's some high school students are parking out there on that street?
The high school students don't typically park on this region, but there is high traffic flow during the early morning and afternoon hours from there. And I know that there has been accidents with them in that intersection down the way, probably with the same concern.
So what would your suggestions be to solve the problem?
Well, we have a few. The first one would be to get a crosswalk in the area. I think that that will be helpful. I don't know that that's the entire solution. I know that we had brainstormed maybe having some parking restrictions, especially coming up onto the intersection, onto the corners, so that we don't have cars blocking the visibility to safely pull out into the intersection. I don't know if maybe like a blinking light to at least draw attention to it, because as you come up Glen Oak Road, you don't really see, and you can't see any street signs that you would identify that as a street to know to slow down. So. And then, Sean, did you want to comment? Because I know you had some other concerns. Is that all right? If he comes up to speak.
If he wants to fill out a form.
He's got
here.
one up there. Or do
Okay.
you want to call him up
We'll
separate?
call him in order. Yeah. Does
Okay.
Janice? Did you want to comment?
Go for it.
Please state your name and.
Janice Keller. I would just like to say Erica pretty much covered everything that we have concerns on. I would like to say also that I walk my dog like twice a day, and I cross that street, and most of the time nobody stops for me. I just have to wait till it's completely clear. So maybe a crosswalk would be a good idea to have there too, and a blinking light maybe, so they could slow down. Because some of the cars going down that road are only supposed to be going 35, but they barrel down that road sometimes. It's pretty bad.
Okay. And one question I had is, what neighborhood association is in that area?
Is it?
Which one is it?
It's Caulfield.
Caulfield.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And next would be is Sean. Is it? How do you pronounce your last name? Okay, good. And then if Karen Morey, if you'll come as well. Okay. Are there any? Let's see here. Yes, that's a good idea.
The trolley is on the agenda, and so we know people are here for Glen Oak Road, and I know there's a gentleman here for Clackamas River Drive, and those are not on the agenda, and so we would want to hear their comments now, if at all possible.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Go ahead. Please state your name.
Sean Kroloff. One of the couple of things that we've seen, obviously Eric has stated a couple of much of the concern. There's a lot of cars that are speeding more than 35. A couple of the things that we could put in place, having a not a camera but the speed check that shows that people are going because I know that tracks how fast people are going.
Sure.
Both Erica and my wife were both pregnant at the same time, and both almost got T-boned multiple times. I don't know how many people on my block have been T-boned, almost been T-boned. I could say almost a dozen times with all of us, and there's only 8 houses. So I mean that tells you there's a lot of people that are speeding or not really realizing that there's a street there. To help with the visibility of us being able to get out, I know we have to almost pull out into the cross traffic to see. Having the curbs painted red on all 4 corners for a minimum of 15 feet to be able to open that view. When all of us moved into the development, they had only had, if you can see on the screen, those first 4 units. There was only those 4 units, the 4 units there and the 4 units that were away from the street. You can see right here, these 4 and these 4 were the only ones there. Now they're the entire length, which there's more traffic flow, and these people don't own their house. They don't care as much. We own here for the city. We have a invested interest for the safety of not just ourselves, our children, but for those around us. And I mean, the high school is right there. And so that is a huge issue with, there's new drivers, and there's just all of this, the speed, the traffic, and that's going to cause issues. I've talked to multiple different police officers, and they say, "Oh, we know about that issue," but there's nothing really have been done. The blinking light, I think, is a great idea, and the crosswalk. So I think those are the things that would be able to possibly help alleviate some of the issues that are there for the safety of the community.
It's good input, good suggestions. Yeah, that's great.
That's all I have.
Okay. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And let's see.
Lady back there has something.
Yes. Okay. And what is your name?
May I just make one more comment?
Sure.
Sorry. I forgot to mention one thing for Sharon.
Just speak into the microphone.
We would like to get a no outlet sign as well going down to Thorpe Court because it is a dead-end street, but specifically no outlet, please. And then the last comment I wanted to make was the very last two houses down Thorpe Court do not have fire access. Oops, I messed that up, sorry. And so the last two houses are required to have fire sprinklers. So when the parking is completely full on either side of the street, there is fire concern to our last two houses on the court because there is only that fire hydrant there on the end that there's no through street. So the fire trucks need to be able to get in there for our home safety. That was it. Thank you.
I'm sorry, where did you say that the fire hydrant's located?
It's on the corner of Thorpe Court and Glen Oak, right at the intersection that we've been discussing.
Okay.
I'm not sure how to bring this back.
It's
okay.
fine.
That's okay.
I just need to...
But yeah, the very last two houses at the end of the court, mine and Sharon's included. If there's parking that is obstructing that, then our houses are at stake.
So there's no fire hydrant in the cul-de-sac?
No, it's on the corner of Glen Oak and Thorpe.
Okay, so it's
Right-
not
right-
it's not
actually
back
right-
in the.
It's right near the stop sign there.
Okay.
Great, thank you so much. We have three others that I don't have on here exactly what they wanted to talk about. The first name is Sharon. Were you going to comment on this issue? Okay, great. Come on up. And please state your name for the record.
Sharon Lanz, Lanz. I also wanted to state that on the parking on both sides, a lot of times there's bigger vehicles that come, and they're actually even in the bike lane. And my pickup is in those pictures that Erica provided for you. And I had to get way out with the nose of my pickup, which also sits higher than these people that have the cars. And you can, I had to sneak out. I got out just as far as I could to be able to see past the first vehicle that's in that picture. And that first vehicle was back at least to the second doorway, which would be probably 20 or 30 feet from that corner. And there was a white car coming down the road towards me. So I pulled out, and then it disappeared. Well, it had stopped to talk to somebody apparently in the other that had already been parked there. But I couldn't see it because I didn't know if it was stopped or if it was going to continue coming. So that's another concern, is that they park out there in that lane. That's about it. Erica told everything else.
Yep.
Okay? Thank you.
Thank you. And just to make sure we have everybody bunched the trolley folks together. Rolla, did you were you going to talk about the trolley or?
Yes.
Okay, so that's a trolley, and then is it Frey?
Yes.
Okay, and you were going to talk about?
South Clackamas River Drive.
Okay, why don't you come forward and talk to us now?
Blaine, before we go into that one, in case
Sure.
this group leaves, I'll just maybe we should, because we don't normally get this big of an audience and we hardly see a full neighborhood or a full street show up, I just wanted to make sure we let you know that, so we've heard your comments. Typically, we don't respond to those at the same meeting. We'll take that feedback and those concerns and look at them. And I guess I'd commit, if it's okay with you, Blaine,
Yes.
to bring this back next month at next month's meeting and provide our response, which may not address all your concerns. That's the other thing is, just because complaints have been heard doesn't necessarily mean that we'll make adjustments. We may make some that'll address some things, but I don't want you to be an angry mob when something maybe short of or falls short of what your expectations might be. But we'll explain those, and we may be able to hit all your needs out there. But just want you to know that. So next meeting when you come back, we'll do our best to address those concerns.
And I can just say that from the time I've been involved with this committee, the city staff and the members of this committee have been very responsive to the comments and suggestions and needs of the community. So I've been very impressed with that. And the only time I've seen any kind of where they maybe mitigate against the suggestion would be when there's statistics that show that, say, in some cases a crosswalk can actually increase danger. But this committee has been very responsive. So yeah.
Yeah, and then thank you for coming, because again, I think it says a lot to have a whole street here to represent their concerns. That's meaningful. We don't get that all the time.
Thank you very much. All right, Rolla, thank you.
Me?
Yep.
I'm it?
Yep.
This is it? Okay.
You only got one from your street to come to this
I
meeting?
know.
My name is Frey Rep. I have Frey's Company, and we run heavy equipment, and our heavy equipment is farm tractors and big mowers. Our smallest mower is 8 feet, and our largest mower goes up to 27 feet. And we mow for you people, matter of fact, and some of the subsidiaries and different things. My problem is I would like to get the speed limit sign dropped to 30 miles an hour. Now that you've got the roundy round in, that helped a little teeny bit, but it gives them an opportunity to drag race from that roundy round down to my place. And when I'm coming out of there with 40-foot semi-trailers with farm tractors and plows and disc on it, we're not very fast. Mm-hmm. And when they're going that fast, which is no excuse for it, to be at 40 miles an hour, because it's a 25-mile-an-hour turn. It's a hairpin 90-degree turn there. And we can't go out our other gate around the corner, because if we do, we're going to get nailed. And it's just too dangerous because they won't slow down. And if we get the sign back down to 30 miles an hour, get my farm sign tractor back up again, I don't know where it went. Mm-hmm. I asked Clackamas County, and they said it was your responsibility now that you guys took that section over. They always had it up there for me before, and yes, it helped. So I'm asking that you drop the speed limit to 30 miles an hour and take your radar trailer thing, whatever you call that thing that shows the speed limit, mm-hmm. and put it there by my windmill. I have the big windmill right there on the corner where my entry is to my equipment yard. I own 2 rental houses there and property up above with Bill Erickson Heavy Construction up above me. I own property up there too with him. When I first bought that property from the railroad, I had to sign on the contract when I bought it with them that I understood that I was buying light industrial property, which that's what I wanted because of my business and stuff. the contract I signed wasn't to make payments. I paid for the place. I own it. So, but I had to sign that waiver contract that I understood that I was buying light industrial property there, and that was good because that's what I wanted. But I've had to teach my renters on both sides of South Clackamas River Drive. I have had to teach them in defense how to enter their driveway. And it's kind of ridiculous, but I have to teach them to, when they get to my double gates at the windmill, they have to slow the traffic down. They're going so ridiculously fast, and they're doing over 40 miles an hour, by the way. You know how that is. So they have to slow the traffic down, whether it be one car or three. They have to slow them down on the turn, on that hairpin turn, then put their signals on during that time, because otherwise they're going to get ass-ended. And the first thing they did was thank me for showing them what to do to save their car and their health. It's stupid, and this has been going on since I've owned the place for, Lord knows, I don't know how long it's been. But anyway, so that's the safety part going in. Now coming out, it's dog eat dog. When they come around that corner, when my renters leave their property, they just have to floorboard it and hope for the best. And that's every time. That's not, because you can't see. You can't see when they hit that corner. And twice a year, they hit the berm and come back down from over drinking or whatever, But if it wasn't for the berm there, they'd be in my shop across the street there. And they have hit my shop twice. So bottom line is, can we please get it to 30 miles an hour? Can I get my farm tractor signs back up like they were before? And I thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Before just the signage piece, I'm not sure. Do you think they were removed during the construction project, or did they just disappear?
I asked. They were there up until 2 months ago. The first one they put up about 7 years ago, Clackamas County put it up. They put it on a steel 2x2 tube stock thing, and the kids bent it over and stole the sign. It's a great sign to steal, for kids in their bedrooms. And so the second one they put up with a 4x4, wood 4x4, just before my link chain fencing is. They put it right there, and they said they didn't know where it went. They didn't take it down. I thought they took it down, and then when I asked them 2 weeks ago, and they said, no, we didn't take it down, Frey. So I don't know if you guys took it down or
no,
another one got stolen.
We wouldn't have taken that down, but
I didn't go
I'm
around
wondering
the
what
corner to
this.
see if there was another one.
We've got historic photos there. We can probably figure out what kind of sign it was. But is it just for crossing? Is it for the tractor business?
It's a really cool. Those tractor signs are like that square, and it shows the diamond sign with a tractor on it, and some guy looks like me on it. Cute and cuddly, by the way. My story worked with it. Yeah, they're really cool looking tractor on this big yellow sign, And it helps. Trust me, it helps, because when I'm trying to cross the street, my shop is across the street. So I drive the tractors across South Clackamas River Drive to get to my shop to work on the tractors, drive them back. Well, tractors aren't fast. You guys know a tractor ain't fast, warp speed of 6, and you got some guy coming 40 miles an hour. Trust me, there's more burn marks with skidding tires coming around when they come around that corner. And of course, where my butt's hanging, or up under my throat, But
Well, we live on 213 just before on the way to Malala, just before you drop down. And there's a fellow that has large dump trucks, and he comes out every morning going north. And these people come up, past the golf course down the gully, and then come up out of there at 50 and 60 sometimes.
Yeah.
And those things are crawling at 3 or 4 miles an hour to get started.
Yeah.
I always think there's going to be a wreck there
Oh,
someday.
yeah. I mean, you have no idea how the lump is in my throat and my people that work for me, when we're trying to pull out of there. And because, like you say, these trucks they're not fast.
They're not fast.
No.
So the other thing I want to say, because a question came up on Glen Oak Road as well, I just want to make it clear that is it posted 35 or 40 right now?
It's 40. It's stupid.
Okay.
It's
So,
just stupid. Yeah.
so the posting is. I mean, that sounds like it'd be a good time for us to look at that anyway, because the ownership has changed, and then the roundabout has made things much different than they used to be.
I was hoping
but-
a roundabout would slow them down a little bit, you know. But boy, I'll tell you, once they come around that, boy, they're off. And you know, it's like, let's see how fast we can get to 40 or 45, because most of them are doing 45. And then they got to brake like crazy when they get to my windmill.
So
Hit that hairpin turn.
So I get all that. I'm just I wanted to make it clear that on speed zone changes, city and the county for that matter doesn't have the authority to change the speed limits without a study from the state. Okay, so we just completed one on South End Road, and we got a reduction in speed, and but that took. You remember that was probably about an 8-month process. It seemed to take a long time. There's one guy in the state that is employed to review speed studies. And so we'll probably take a look first and do a little speed study of our own to find out. I mean, people think setting speeds by signage will slow people down, and that's not necessarily the case without enforcement. Okay, and we have some limits on our ability to do enforcement in the city. So just because we want to slow traffic from 40 to 30, we can add. We can't just post it that way, especially if drivers are comfortable using that road at that speed. So a lot of the speed at which drivers will move down a roadway is based on how wide are the lanes, how big a shoulder is there, what kind of obstructions are there, what's the likelihood of the tractor crossing, that kind of thing, right? But if people don't see that threatening, they're going to drive whatever speed they feel comfortable driving that on. So oftentimes the state will look at they'll look at what we call the 85th percentile. So what are 85% of the cars doing? And if 85% of the cars are traveling at 40 miles per hour, it's quite unlikely that they'll change that speed limit just because we want to do that for traffic calming reasons. So speed signs and speed zone are not established based on, they're not necessarily intended to be calming devices. So just so you know that. But we'll look at this one as well, just like the Glen Oak Road thing. And if we probably have to put a little more effort into that, because we'll probably need to do a little bit of a speed study of our own just to see what vehicles are really doing. And then once we do that, if we're in agreement that we think this should be at a lower rate of speed, we will. It's a pretty simple form for us to submit to the state, but it takes them a long time to actually take action on it. And again, I think ours was at least 6 months for South End Road. I want to say it was 8. It's longer.
This is the first step then.
It's first step. Yeah.
And I want to pursue it, and I want
Sure.
to be involved in it. And I'm 70 years old. I know I'm too cute for that age, but you know what? Another one you got to work with it. Is I want to see 80, and it's hard to do when an old man like me is trying to walk back and forth across there, and I walk across South Clackamas River Drive at least 15 times a day, and my tractors are going across. One tractor or another's going across at least twice a day.
Sure.
So,
Great.
and
Does anybody have a question?
Well, that stretch of road, starting, let's say, up there at Abernathy Road, it's 25 on Washington Street, and then about with a welding supply, it jumps to 35. Then at Home Depot, it drops down to 25.
yeah, everything
You
around
know,
there.
there's a whole bunch of.
That's the only 40-mile-an-hour strip there is. That little teeny strip. How and why it ever got to 40 is beyond me. It's like you're saying, everybody else is way, 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 way lower.
Bob?
You'll have to answer this, John. Have you seen those big convex mirrors that they put up on poles? Are those paid by the city or the homeowners area, or?
Typically, no. They're something that the property owner installs.
Okay. Would something like that help in the interim?
No, I wouldn't help a bit.
Okay.
Because they're on you too fast because of their speed.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you'll be able to. It'll give you a little more time to see it before they hit you. But I don't care what color it is when it hits me, the car. Okay, thank you very much,
Yeah,
gentlemen.
thank you.
And lady, is that it? I can.
Thank you, Frey.
You can bake. You can rush home.
You can,
Don't do 30.
you can sit here and watch our pretty faces.
If you're not careful, you may end up on the the Transportation Advisory Committee. There you go. All right. All right. Thank you. Okay. Now we have three people here to talk about the trolley, and let's go ahead and get started with Karen Morey.
Hello, Karen Morey, and I'm not as cute or as entertaining, but the other night at the City Commission meeting, there was a preliminary discussion about the trolley, and thank you so much for, Bob, was that you that asked that it come here?
Yes.
That excellently detailed history report. Thank you very much, and I think this is a good start. I just kind of want to express, I guess, where I stand on the trolley. I'm a board member with the Clackamas County Historical Society. I also am serving on the city's tourism committee that looks at distributing the TDC monies. Very tied into the heritage tourism side of the city. I also work for the Chamber of Commerce and give out tourism information to people. The trolley is very important to historic tourism in Oregon City. Currently, one of the major tourism draws to the area is the heritage sites that are available. The trolley is visual. When it is running in the summer, yes, there's times that, the ridership is low. I think we could probably work on encouraging that and improving it. We're already getting calls at the Chamber wanting to know when the trolleys are starting this year. We have people that kind of plan large group trips here in order to take the trolleys. The other side of it, I've worked on Main Street for many, many, many years, and I've seen the parking problems. I've seen the need for a shuttle. I've never viewed the trolley. It's been interesting what the city has tried to make it into. It's not a shuttle. It's an open trolley. It's a novelty. And unfortunately, it's an expensive novelty. I'm hoping that somewhere in the budget or through some other type of funding, the city can make a commitment to heritage tourism and maintain those trolleys for the summer. But I also hope that we start looking at viable options for shuttle service, because that also is a need in the city.
Good. Thank you.
Karen, are you speaking on behalf of the Chamber?
No.
Yourself?
All those hats.
Thank you, Karen. William.
Thank you. William Becker, Oregon City. And I want to echo some of what Karen has said. I also am involved on various heritage organizations in the city. I'm not speaking for them, I'm speaking for myself. But the trolley is one of the landmarks of the city anymore when it comes to our history and our heritage. We're arguably the most historic city, and have the most important history of any place in the Pacific Northwest. We were the capital. This is the foundation of everything. And we need to do everything we can to help promote that. Those trolleys help make it visible. They help represent one of the firsts, which is the first interurban electric railroad, in a sense. My niece and nephew, when they would come with my sister from the East Coast every summer, one of the first things they wanted to do every year was ride the trolley when they were kids. We use them as part of planning events at the museums and such during the season when the trolleys are running. They're great at getting people from place to place to place for that. And a lot of times people just get on them and ride them. A lot of places, Astoria, for example, has its own little rail trolley that runs a couple mile distance, and that little town's able to make it work. And they've got a thriving heritage industry going, a thriving history industry. Maybe we have to charge $1. I think what they do is they charge $1 or $2 all day. There might be some funding options that way. And then look at other uses of the trolley off-season or even later in the evenings where they can help produce revenue to help maybe offset their costs. But I think they are a very important part of our city at this point. So thank you.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Rolla? And Rocky, if you'd like to come up at the same time, and we'll just, yeah, it'd be great.
I should sit with you.
I know.
Life is hard.
We gotta look at it.
Boy, this is a rough crowd, I'll tell you what.
My name is Rolla Harding. I'm president of the McLaughlin Memorial Association, also chairman of the Oregon City Heritage Coordinating Committee. When I first heard that there was a chance that we would no longer be blessed with the trolleys, it was very much a concern of ours. Speaking for the McLaughlin House and the Barclay houses, it's very much a part of the tourism at those sites. We traditionally meet the trolley. The trolleys provided a means for people to get to our homes, and it's just really a part of our program. And the thought of the trolleys disappearing is very disheartening, because it seems like it's another blow to the tourism here locally. My wife and I managed the Irma Tinger House for about 20 years. Of course, it's not in service at this point, hopefully soon. And to keep our tourism and our heritage to be chipped away by another loss would be very sad. There's communities that I know would love to have them, and there's communities that try to manufacture their tourism. Oregon City doesn't have to manufacture anything. It's here. It's part of us, and the trolleys are part of it. I understand the economic concerns. They're real. But if there's any way that we can work a way to keep the trolleys, it would be so beneficial to continue our programs. So I assume that you group of gentlemen will be making a recommendation. Do I understand the process correctly?
Yes.
To people that we know.
Higher powers.
I hope you consider the real importance of this and to our heritage and tourism communities.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Rocky Smith, Oregon City. I've not sat in this. It's kind of intimidating.
Yeah.
Tables are turned.
Yes. So I appreciate Bob's comments at the last City Commission meeting, and I'm also not going to speak, obviously, on behalf of the Commission in any way. But I do sit on the Oregon City Tourism Council and also on the Oregon City Tourism Coordinating Committee. A lot of different, basically all the tourism committees.
Yeah.
And I appreciate TAC asking for this to be placed on their agenda. I felt at the commission level myself that this is a topic we haven't really spent a lot of time talking about in great depth, and it seems that it's one of those items that we have within the city that doesn't fit in a particular department. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately with that, the departments don't necessarily know how to handle them, or want to, or it's not a priority in the budget for that department. So my personal belief is I want to see more of a discussion, and that's why I personally recommended that, felt we should discuss this more before we just say we're not going to do the trolleys anymore. I think there's definitely a concern about the amount of money it's costing us. Right now it doesn't pencil, it doesn't make sense. But I would like to see if there is a way that does make sense before we just commit to completely getting rid of it. But I think there's a lot of different topics. One is the transportation issues. I think that's separate from the tourism issue. So there's a lot of different issues, and some of them are connected to the trolleys and some of them aren't. So the question is, what is the trolley really being? I think the trolley in the past, the trolley has always been tied to parking, but in reality, the most of the use is from tourism. And so I think that's two topics that need to be, I guess it's two groups that kind of need to combine to have this discussion. And so I wasn't completely sure that it was on the agenda tonight until I looked at the agenda today and tried to get some of the heritage community here. But I'm interested in hearing the dialogue that you have tonight. And hopefully, I don't know if it means that we have a work session in the future with TAC and the City Commission or some of the tourism groups. I just think there needs to be more of a dialogue on the options for the trolleys, what we can use them for, how we can use them in a different way, or does it not work? And so I appreciate your ability to, I appreciate you allowing us to talk about it this evening, and I'm looking forward to hearing what your input is on this topic. So thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you. Okay.
Looks like I'll need to address that.
Yes. So first, number 6A here, we want to move on to new business discussion items, and we have the trolley program. And did you have a report that you wanted to make, or Bob?
Well, Bill Cler's in the room, and he's going to present for the police department. Just so, other than that, it's open for discussion. We didn't, I think amongst yourselves as to kind of some of the ideas of what you're thinking of and what kind of ideas you've got, and talk about Bob's memo, because I don't think that came from the TAC. That it came from Bob.
The general idea came from the TAC. I was responsible for most of the details, but I got ideas, suggestions, like the advertising and so on,
right, from
various sources.
Okay. So, Bill, you want to step up, and Bill's with Oregon City Police Department, and go
Bill
ahead.
Clare. I'm a lieutenant with the Oregon City Police Department. I supervise code enforcement, who currently has the trolleys under their powers, their commission. I really don't have a presentation. I was just simply asked to be here to hear the dialogue. I watched the commission meeting that Mr. LaSalle was at and presented to that. Rocky summed it up very nicely. It's strictly an economic issue. The Code Enforcement Division has been running them for the last several years, kind of outside of their expertise, but we've been doing it, and it just comes down to dollars and what we want it to look like in the future. If we want to sustain the trolley program. But I don't have a presentation. Just wanted to be here if I could answer any questions. By no means am I a trolley expert. I'm a police officer, but I have a little bit of 3-year data that we've collected just with ridership, and I think it's been regurgitated at several different meetings you guys have attended with the. Go ahead.
Oh, I'm a little curious, and maybe you can give us some history, or John, but originally the trolley was brought into being to solve a parking problem.
Yeah.
And that was part of the public works. Then the responsibility flowed or moved to the code enforcement. And then
I think there's another step in between there somewhere.
There may have been.
Went to the Parks Department for a while.
And then it went to police. And I'm just
community
wondering,
services.
What was the rationale in it going to the police department?
I was involved in those conversations, and I honestly couldn't tell you.
Well, I think it was code enforcement changed. Code enforcement changed from public works and went to first it went to community services, and then it ended up in police. And code enforcement also includes parking. So, Nancy Bush has always kind of managed those programs, whether it be parking, and trolley ended up there because that's a lot of the way the trolley's been funded is through parking fees. So over the years, there's the trolleys have followed that path of money, and so that's why it's now code enforcement. I think the code enforcement lands squarely in police departments.
But it is
tool chest, but the parking and I think parking does too. It's just this association, the trolley with the parking fund.
But in terms of who's making the decision on the future of the trolley, right now that is the police department. It's not code enforcement. Am I clear on that?
Well, I think the decision is up to the city commission, really.
Yeah, okay.
I mean,
All right. I wanted to be clear on that.
The departments, whether it be, well, I mean, right now it is, the police department, but I think what we're kind of hearing from them is there's a lot of history here, and it happens to be in their under their kind of authority.
Yeah, supervision.
They're not in love with that idea, kind of like Laraki alluded to. Kind of like Public Works wasn't in love with that idea, and nor was Community Services when that time happened. And a lot of that's got to do with the fact that, it's the cost issue. I mean, we're talking about, I can't remember the number, $10 a ride.
$10 a ride, it's
so whoever
$10 a
has
ride comes down to.
So whoever has that under their purview, their responsibility, that's cutting into their budget.
The parking revenue has paid for the trolleys for some time.
Is that still the case?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay. But it's still being subsidized. Is it being fully subsidized by the parking fees?
It's my understanding it is.
Okay.
Yeah. So the cost to run those, I mean, that's one piece. The other piece is just the difficulty in managing them with the place where we store them is a problem. We store them up at the armory, and we pay a pretty high price to do that. Those trolleys have wooden finishes, and they're just not meant for all season running. So when we run them in the summertime only. So there's like 70 days.
Right, for 70 days a year.
70 days when those trolleys are running, and they, and when we do that, I think the other little piece to this is replacement of trolleys is something that hasn't necessarily been funded out of parking. So the last trolley we purchased, I think, was $285,000 or something. It was a pretty high price.
$260, I believe. But I'm
yeah.
not
Okay.
positive.
So it's an expensive price tag for that trolley. It's a bus, basically, a decorative looking bus, right? It's on a bus chassis,
right?
And they're custom built. And so that came together using general fund dollars. I don't remember exactly how that purchase came around, but so we bought an extra trolley because we were trying to it's hard to manage a trolley program with just one trolley or even two. Mm-hmm. And our third, or at the time when we had two, we still got one of them that's very, very old and really has trouble at times in the heat, especially of making just a simple tourism route that we've kind of had it on. So. There's if we're going to have a trolley program that's for tourism, there's the question about who's managing it, but really the question is how do we fund that in a sustainable way? Because right now we're talking about annual operation. That's the $10 a ride thing, or do you remember the dollar amount per year, Bill? Because I don't remember all these facts.
The last 3 years, roughly, the average of the last 3 years is $72,000.
$70,000.
Yeah, and so, but that doesn't include any kind of reserves for replacement. So again, looking at both ridership, which is low, and some of that's got to do with the fact that our museums have for the most part closed. Mm-hmm. So our ridership has, there's less demand to get it to these various tourism spots, and at the same time, because we go out to the end of the Oregon Trail and we come in down through Main Street, and it does feel a little bit like it's acting as a shuttle service as well. So there's driver issues, just trying to make sure we've got usually it's bus drivers because it's summertime, so that allows us to hire drivers that are typically not unemployed. Yeah, they're not working throughout the summer, and just kind of managing those drivers and keeping the routes right. I think every year the routes adjust a little bit based on somebody's suggestion of what might be a better spot to stop at, so that maybe our ridership will go up. So we've tried moving the shuttle up to the hilltop and back down, up along the corridor, down onto Washington Street, at various museums, down Main Street, And that changes just about every year because we either don't see the ridership, typically we don't see the ridership, or we're concerned about the ability for the trolley to get to the hilltop, and once you publish a schedule, it's really kind of critical that you meet that schedule because, in theory, especially when we go to the hilltop, it becomes a little bit less of a tourism route and more of a transportation route. So we were finding ourselves kind of, at least when it was in Public Works, transitioning from just a tourism thing to a transportation thing, and we definitely those trolleys are definitely not. They don't fit the bill for transportation solutions.
Right. Yeah, and those are the three that I see that. One is a parking issue, and then the other is transportation, like basically a bus,
and then tourism
in the city, then the tourism.
Yeah,
and
so for the most part, they are kind of maintenance heavy with regard to how much we have to do to keep them running. If we have a breakdown, it's a challenge for our 2-man Public Works maintenance crew to get over there and deal with the riders that are displaced at that time, and get the trolley back in order. So it's kind of like we're trying to manage something with not really the resources that we need to do that. And it's taken us kind of a long time to acknowledge that because of the reasons that people are coming, because there is a group of people who feel passionate about those trolleys. There's a whole other group that isn't so passionate about the trolleys and want the city to run pretty efficiently and more efficiently, that want to make sure we're getting value out of every dollar we collect. And so how to balance those,
part of it too is a timing issue, because in my thinking, I did my undergrad in San Francisco, and that really is primarily a tourism function. It does do some transport, but most people, this is really for tourism. And to me, it's a timing issue. I can see in the next 5 years, Oregon City becoming a much more robust tourism, and I could see demand for that increasing. So in my mind, one option is, you have one group that says, let's just liquidate and sell it. You have another group that says, no, let's continue to fund it. Most public transportation is subsidized. I think TriMet, I looked at their pie chart, and I think 75% of TriMet, only 25% comes from fees, which shocked me. But in my mind, the third option, if really doesn't pencil, would be to mothball them instead of selling them. Just wait another few years until we get some things I know people are working on in tourism. But any thoughts here, John?
Can I just add one thing? We finances was brought up, and we have tried to rent them to subsidize some of the cost, and unfortunately, they broke down routinely. So then we're incurring tow bills and then refunding the rental fee essentially. So we stopped that last year because of that exact reason. Was they just weren't dependable for longer trips. It broke down on the way to the Rose Garden one time, so we had to have it towed back, and then obviously the event that was being rented out was a bust, and then we had to refund the bill. So we have looked at those options as well, and we have done it over the years. But the integrity of these machines are kind of breaking down as time goes on, and to mothball them, I'm not sure how long the integrity of the apparatuses would hold up if that were the case. I don't know. I'm not a mechanic, but there's one that's basically a parts trolley, and the other two are operable at this point.
Well, we need to figure out how to turn them into trolley pubs, and
there's a market.
There's a market for that. So, John, did you have more to add to that?
Well, again, I think Bob brought a lot of ideas that haven't been vetted in this group or discussed. I think they should be.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Well, as a result of my presentation to the City Commission on March 12th, it was suggested that the TAC have a work session in regard to the trolley, and it's a bigger issue than just the trolley. It's more, in addition to that, it's the general lack of transportation, public transportation in Oregon City. And that would entail some kind of a shuttle. And so I think that we need to have one of our meetings soon devoted to the trolley issue. And then the mayor indicated that he wanted then to have a joint session with us or a subcommittee of us or whatever with the commission to address that whole issue of the shuttle and or trolley system. And what comes to my mind is, as I was driving here this evening, I drove by the senior center over there, and there's 3 shuttle buses sitting there. So the city somehow provides those. I'm not sure of the details, but I just saw them there.
Yeah, those aren't city owned.
Okay.
They're owned by another group that I know you probably don't know. I'm trying to think. But anyway, it's through community services, and it's part of the adult center. And I don't. Rocky,
Okay,
do you remember
yeah, I
much
wasn't-
about those. I can't remember too much. If that's a ride share, or there's somebody. There's another group that owns those.
Right, and the other piece of it, and this is one of the issues that came up in the recent past with events using the senior center buses, was that they can only be used for seniors.
Well, I count.
Because of some of the funding that's tied in with it, so that's they're pretty limited in what they're used for.
Thank you, Rocky.
Okay,
I
well,
don't-
that's
I don't know
just
too much about
impressed
those,
with me
but
that that was probably the kind of a vehicle that would need it if we had a regular
I would
shuttle.
agree with that. That's more the kind of vehicle. If we're talking shuttle service to solve parking issues, I wish out of this group we could kind of land on
What's the goal?
what is it? What is the goal? I mean, that's what we struggle with when we talk about it at staff, at the staff level. If we're talking, a tourism decoration or whatever for the city to showcase, that's kind of one goal. If we're looking for a shuttle service that's more resolving parking issues, that's another thing. If you're talking more of a transit service for the areas that are unserved in Oregon City, that's a completely different conversation. So what conversation do we really want to have? And maybe we want to have all 3 of those, but I think I would say I feel pretty confident that our trolley program and transit are way apart. Transit and reliable transit is not something that this city is in the, it's not part of our business plan, if you will, Now, that's not to say that we can't advocate and work with our partners, hopefully, with TriMet and do a better job with that transit service. But to create a transit department, kind of like what Wilsonville might have, is that they've got a department dedicated to that. They've stopped paying TriMet fees. I think they collect those fees and use them themselves. That's a much bigger topic. It's not on our commission goals. It's something different. But at the same time, we can continue to talk to TriMet about trying to enhance their bus service to better serve our community. I agree with that.
Yeah.
But
Well,
I
I
do
think
think
part of our responsibility as a committee is to look into all the options of transportation. And I can't tell you how many times since I've been sitting on the committee for the South End concept plan in our meetings there, that people have come to me about the poor transportation in that part of the city now, since there's no TriMet out there. In my area, Polcom Boulevard, there's very few buses run up there, and a lot of people in that area are very low income. They can't afford a car, much less the insurance for it, and they rely on public transportation, as poor as it is, to get to and from minimum wage jobs.
Yeah.
And it's pretty pitiful. So I think that we need, as a committee, to look at all these things that maybe the city can't provide them all, or maybe it's 10 years down the line. But it's a start.
Right.
And we have to start somewhere to help the citizens.
So I guess what I'm trying to do is, do we want to talk about the city's bigger transportation needs citywide while we're also talking about trolley, or can we separate? Can we bifurcate those two? So that we're talking about, to me, I think the trolley is about tourism and about shuttle service. That's more the realm in which the trolleys ride in. But if you're disagreeing with that, then we need to kind of figure out.
Well, we're in that tough situation where we have an asset and you're trying to find a use for the asset, as opposed to if you didn't have it, you say, well, what are our needs? Well, we need transportation. So we develop a CAP program like Canby. That's a whole different issue. Funding's different and everything else. Maybe grants are available, I don't know. But that's a whole different thing. You're talking about parking shuttle back and forth from, say, the interpretive center to downtown for the courthouse people or whatever. That's a completely different thing. And that I'm thinking, well, maybe the trolley could be used for that. But in my mind, that is a tourism, that's eye candy. It's fun.
That vehicle's
it's a
not
tourism
made
thing.
for that shuttle program with the elements and in state of Oregon.
It's not it's not adequate.
It would break down quickly, aesthetically, and visually, and
so we've got a wonderful piece of a neat asset that's fun. It's quirky. It's cool, but the tourism in Oregon City is just not robust enough. Now I can see, certainly when the waterfall comes open to the public. And if we ever get some kind of construction down, retail outfit down at the Rossman landfill, the Cove and those kinds of, I can really see Oregon City tourism really becoming robust and needing something like that. But right now, I think we're just in such a quandary over the whole, so.
I've been listening to the conversation and trying to think of a way to visually see these three different concepts, tourism, shuttle, and public transit, and have the stakeholders, I'm thinking of a matrix that staff would prepare, have some cost numbers that are relevant to each, and maybe our first effort would be to sort them out, because it seems to me we keep jumping back and forth between potential uses, some of which don't sound too realistic. So this is just for instance, if you're going to use those vehicles for the shuttle, but they really can't be operated in the winter because of the wood, I'm just assuming that's the case, your shuttle system would be bifurcated because you wouldn't have vehicles to do it except for the 3 months out of the summer. So there's a number of ways in which if you look at each one of these types of uses, that vehicle is either going to fit or not fit. And we may be spending a huge amount of effort to save the vehicles because they're unique, when in fact, for significantly less, you could cover two other goals, the parking shuttle and some service in the community. I don't know that to be the case, but I'm just saying we're kind of locked on that, and maybe we shouldn't be. And so you could prepare something for us so we could sort those things and think of them categorically. That might help when we have a work session.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, during the work session of the commission the other night, it was also suggested that we include some stakeholders in our discussions. And my thoughts were, of course, Downtown Oregon City Group and somebody from TriMet and maybe somebody from the South End area. I don't know what other stakeholders would be appropriate.
Obviously, the historic and tourism
Well, yeah,
group.
yeah, right, yeah.
And the chamber. It sounds to me like this thing is just a little orphan. It's getting bumped all over the place.
the trolley program.
Yeah, I don't think that we have really landed on a transportation policy to include these factors that we've been talking about, tourism and people in need of public transportation, like Bob says up in his neck of the woods. And nobody's penciled this out, except I think the city manager's office says, to show that it doesn't pencil out.
Yeah, it's $1,000 a day to run 2 trolleys. It's $500 a day to run a trolley for the trolley season.
You know, we can talk a good ball game, but at the end of the day, like they say, that being said,
Well, they're certainly helping pay for the armory maintenance
they are.
up there at $30,000 a year for storage.
That's for storage, yeah.
Whoa.
Yeah.
it's just a
I mean,
question, it's a question of whether or not the city can afford it. You know, because you're talking about the creation of a single, separate department for transportation to, with the skill to operate this thing and administer it and to capitalize it, if you want to go that far. And you've got to look at the cost of it.
Depreciating
That's what's going
equipment.
to determine how costly is it going to be and how effective it's going to be. Because the ridership right now of the trolley really isn't there. It's not there.
They're definitely attractive for the tourism and the historical communities here in Oregon City. That's there's no doubt about it. But you know, if we were to donate them to them,
Right.
they probably don't have the resources to run them and to finance them. So you know, so it's kind of a rock and a hard
It's a
place.
costly proposition.
Well, I was just thinking we should, the city commission should start a TAC 2, a tourism advisory commission, and we can just shift that over to. But
So are you saying I want to shift the decision-making on this one? That seems to be the problem, is nobody wants to resolve this one.
Well, you know, I think the benefit is primarily to tourism, and so, you know, the tourism community, and to me, it's kind of vaguely defined. There are a lot of players, a lot of stakeholders, but to me, there's not a real focal point on that. But it seems to me that those are the stakeholders or the community that needs to figure out a way to make this work. If it's to their advantage, if it's truly an advantage, then they need to find ways to fund it, or to convince higher powers to fund it. Because that's really the crux of it, I think, is that no one wants to fund it.
Well, in my presentation, I gave some options as far as
You did, yes.
abilities to generate some money that, of course, wouldn't pay for the whole cost of the trolleys, but every little bit counts. For example, a $1 or $2 round-trip fee. And tourists will pay that easily. They pay that. Adjusting some of the permit parking spaces downtown, eliminating those, and then gaining the revenue from meters being put on those places, and you make a huge amount more money than you do off the permit parking spaces.
Well, let's not say, I don't think huge is a good description of anything we're going to earn by removing parking spaces or charging for parking or charging for fee to, I think just I agree, there's maybe a little bit of money to help fill some needs, but I don't think it's huge.
Okay, I'll retract my statement of huge, but it adds to the pot.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, I think, we keep mixing things, and if the true interest of the stakeholders being the historical and groups and heritage groups is to have someone have a shuttle that would shuttle people, and you could get rid of the current ones, and you could have something like the senior buses, and it operated at 1/3 of the cost, then we need to know that. Are we trying to save those 3 vehicles, or are we trying to accomplish some other goal? And there may be a completely different way to make them fundable. I don't know that to be the case, but so, we have to sort those things out. And it seems to me if staff can give us, again, some kind of matrix analysis that lists those things, we can start to do it. But I think we can't take those, save those, they're high maintenance, and then they're limited in their seasonability in terms of use, and then have them hit all 3 of these needs. I don't think that works.
That's why I'd like to be able to bifurcate again the transportation issue, which is a much bigger issue. But Bob, if I hear from you that you're not ready to do that, but it does help that whether it be a committee of stakeholders. I think if we're talking about transit service, that stakeholder group is a bigger animal to deal with. If we're talking about parking, that's and tourism and what that should look like. That seems a lot. That stakeholder group seems like combined with the expertise in this room, seems like a good workshop to have.
I think so too.
And in that, John, we could provide a matrix of solutions. I mean, a lot of this, Kathy, I can't remember if we produced it for this group or not, but it's we've looked at other vendors that could provide more of a shuttle service. And we've looked at others that could take over our, part of the solution might be find a vendor who will sublease or cut us a deal given the value of those trolleys and continue to allocate those trolleys for maybe part of that shuttle service so that maybe we see that trolley come through town twice a day, I don't know, or something like that. But all the other rides are more of a shuttle specific, maybe there's a recipe like that. I think the ingredients are there, but the minute we take it to, to a much bigger, if I can live with my recipe, a much bigger meal, then it's more difficult to kind of get to that. And so that's why I'd like to bifurcate those two.
So this is kind of the first conversation we had about this, and we're just starting to absorb some of Bob's suggestions there. But I think this group then needs to make a decision on what level we want to go at. You talk about bifurcating it, but we need to have something in front of us so we can say, even if it's voting 4-1 against Bob, that it's not going to be a full city transit system. We need to have that so we can then narrow down the target and then narrow it again and get the right stakeholders involved.
Well, in the final analysis, it's got to go to the commission because you got a budget preparation being undertaken, and that would be our responsibility or opportunity to make that recommendation to the commission, would it not? I mean, we're not going to be the...
Right, because of timing, the city commission gave directed staff to plan for another season of trolley operation. So that gets us through a little bit of time.
Mm-hmm.
But you're right. If we're going to run something different, it's going to have anything we do is going to have budget implications.
Yeah.
Well, I think a work session is I really do.
I think that would be valuable. Yeah.
I agree.
Rocky? Yes? Okay.
And don't invite the police department.
No.
Wise idea. I like that.
Have you ever pulled over a trolley? Have you had
Well, we had Martin talk about the trolley system in Orlando between SeaWorld and
I'm not from the Orlando area. I couldn't answer that question.
between SeaWorld and Universal Studios, they got a trolley system. It's so much, you buy a ticket for 3 days and you can get off and get on anytime you want.
That point right there is really the point. I mean, when the Willamette Falls, when that whole area, the Blue Heron is developed, and you have at the north end developed, I can see a trolley system being a tourism-focused trolley system going through downtown Main Street, there, and then up to the historic homes, and I could see it just being a real important part of the tourism. But we're just not quite there yet with those developments.
Well, I need to acknowledge, John, that this has been somewhat of a learning experience for me also, and I do realize that those are separate issues that we have to address separately, and I may have a grandiose plan out there that only part of it will be approved, but only part of my traffic plan up on Holcomb Boulevard worked too, so I'm still happy.
Hey, batting 500 is good. Batting 500, you're doing well.
That's right.
That'll get you in the majors.
Well, this discussion is helpful. This is our first real discussion about it, but
so work sessions for the commission are on a different night. Is that what you mean by you want to have another work session, or you just want to have another one of these where we bring back more of the details of what.
Yeah, I think this advisory group can go for the first work session and.
But do it on a regular night?
Or an extra night if that's what it takes. I mean, it depends on what kind of agendas we're looking at.
Yeah, we had the TSP devoted for one full meeting that one time last fall. So I think we could do the same with this issue if the rest of them agree with that, or we could have a separate meeting.
My preference would be to have a separate meeting, to where we can just focus on this alone and not,
Right.
and invite others that are involved. I mean,
I do want to mention one of the key elements is making sure we're not talking about shuttle service with the trolleys because as you know, the City Commission has adopted the parking study, which incorporates a shuttle system. So it's a whole different animal with the parking study.
right. I mean, in my mind, we're saying we don't want it as a shuttle, parking shuttle. We don't want it as transportation.
Yeah.
And so
Strictly
the only thing it's
tourism and
really
historic.
for, and so in my mind, the tourism group is going to have to step up and find a way to fund that if that, we heard from several people tonight that really, really want that, and primarily for tourism. So if that group wants to keep this, they're going to have to help come to the table with us and find ways to fund that. I mean, I'd like to keep it. I like them. So, I think they could be valuable in the future, but we just need to find a way to fund it. So, okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Coming by.
You bet.
So, do we need a motion to?
Yeah, I'll try a motion, and people can add to it or subtract from it. I'd make a motion that the advisory committee have a separate work session to evaluate the trolley question, and after that, I'll follow up with a suggestion on how to tackle it. So that'd be my initial motion.
Okay. Do we have a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. And any discussion? Okay, call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions? Motion carries.
So again, I'll go back to what I was saying before. You called it bifurcating. I think there's maybe 3 categories there. And I'm not saying we have to build a tool that's going to flush out everything on all 3, but enough so that this group can make the decision, and what the chairman was alluding to here, peel off the ones that aren't going to make any sense and then focus on the one that we think we are dealing with here. And then we need to have the right stakeholders there to see if they can step up in any way to assist, or maybe we can figure out a completely different system that's much less expensive. So that's what I'm looking at.
So, do you want to give us some direction on stakeholders, or do you want us to make that choice?
I think
Or do
you can
wanna-
make that choice. I mean, some of the members here may have some other ideas, but we've heard a couple tonight. There may be some others.
Definitely the folks that are involved in tourism, obviously the commissioners, a representation there.
I haven't read the report you just referred to. There's a shuttle analysis within the police department finance report.
The parking study?
Yeah.
Yeah, the parking study was done in '09, and it was adopted by the commission, and that's why you have all the permit parking outside of the core of downtown Oregon City. That's why the meters were changed to 2 hours. All that is represented in the parking study. And the next phase of the parking study is the shuttle, which would bring people ideally from the end of the Oregon Trail into the core. So just a quick shuttle from Main Street, the courthouse area, to the end of the Oregon Trail parking lot and the municipal lot. There's also discussions with the county trying to fix the parking problems downtown associated with the courthouse. So there's a lot of
those could be
discussions.
2 elements to that piece. The shuttle piece, we can find out what you've already prepared. I don't. Maybe you're just recommending something be done, but maybe there's been a study done that said you can.
There's been no studies done for a shuttle. I can tell you that the ARCH shuttle they utilized, which was just old school buses painted white, were $42 an hour with labor, mechanical, tires on the ground, fuel. But again, that was a very low budget apparatus vehicle.
And I mean, I've been involved in a situation where the city is in the Minneapolis metropolitan area, opted out just like Sandy and Wilsonville, and built their own system. But we leased and contracted dial rides and van pools to replace what was there. So we didn't own anything, and they handled the dispatch and everything. So it was, we were managing a contract. I don't know if that's something that works here or could work here, but
I think
it worked there.
That's exactly what we'll be looking into for a shuttle for downtown, is trying to contract it out and use an RFP process to.
Yeah.
That's exactly what we'll be doing down there. So for a parking shuttle. But again, that parking shuttle needs to be rapid. It can't,
Right,
so
exactly.
that people can come take care of business and get back, like the airport, so to speak, every 15 minutes or so.
Right.
So, but yeah, there's the parking studies I think you're referring to.
Okay, so our next step then is a work session, and we'll talk about putting that together and go from there. Good enough? All right. So we have a half hour. Let's move on. Is that okay, John, to move forward on the agenda? Did you have more to?
No, it's definitely okay to move forward with the agenda.
Okay.
I'm going to try and shorten these up because we've spent a lot of time. The next item is the 7th Street pedestrian crossing, and there's actually two. We're dealing with two different crossings. One is at 7th and John Adams. So right now, we've over the years we've looked at that idea. It's been suggested by both the neighborhood and some of the local businesses, and now we've got the library there, and so there's support for pedestrian crossing 7th. And we've heard that for a long time. The traffic study that was done when there was a traffic study that was completed. I think it's in your report. So in 2010, there was a traffic study that was done that recommended no striped crosswalk at that location, kind of like the no striped crosswalk at 6th and John Adams, which we since have added. They recommended removal of some parking on either side, so that, or at least on the in front of the fire station, so that there'd be better sight distance, but still no crosswalk there. And so that issue's kind of been out there for a while, and now we're seeing pricing on these rapid, these lighted flashing beacons. And I don't remember, we might have talked about this at the last meeting, but I don't know that I was specific to this intersection. So I just wanted you to know that we're proposing trying our first rapid flashing beacon, and we think this is the right location to do it. Now we've informed the CIC of that, and it came up at a city commission meeting that why this intersection and not somewhere else. And best I can say is we haven't done an analysis of all the locations where something might make sense to be put in. We really like that location. Well, Martin just came into it. Hopefully he likes it. I don't know. But for me, it was one because I've heard about it a lot, and I think that it's during certain events, it's definitely warranted.
The
Other times,
and the music programs are going to the
other
library.
times, I don't think it is warranted there. But still, there's plenty of events that happen there, and I think as this courtyard and that area continues to kind of develop, especially with the Ermitanger House, getting some investment in it, there may be more draw there. So we want to put in these rapid flashing beacons that would be pedestrian activated, so you could hit a button and once
And that's
you hit,
at the driver's eye level. It's they
right.
go, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Amber flashing
yeah.
beacons with signage to go along with them. These here, because of the shade, we're talking about. The other reason why we like that site is because we've got power source on either side of the street. At least we think we do. So we're going to look. We're going to look harder at that. Yeah, we confirm that. So it's purchase of some equipment that is still fairly expensive, but and then we got to. There's some sidewalk problems there anyway, so deal with those, get them wired in, and try them there. one of the things that Martin's asked me for is, well, do we have any criteria by which we should select these? Because the next time, once they go in, there's
Right.
going to be people that are going to be requesting them. So we need to look at that harder, just like anything else, like our speed bump criteria or anything else. And I think because of the cost of these, we think we're going to spend somewhere between $18,000 and $20,000, depending on the sidewalk needs, to build these or put these in place. And that's pretty expensive for pedestrian crossings.
One question I had, in the literature that came along with the packet, they had two, one at John Adams and then one at the next street up, two crossings. And I was thinking, is it really necessary to have two crosswalks?
So that was a miscommunication between when I asked Kathy to throw something together. I said there's been a request further up the hill at the funeral home. And I meant the funeral home further up, even on the other side of Jackson. I can't remember the side street there. So I want to talk about that intersection too. But Kathy didn't. She assumed the funeral home closest to this one. So forget the second dot.
Okay.
Okay.
So we're just talking at
John
Adams and 7th. Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
Now there was a conversation. I had one of our ex-mayors, Don Anderson, Senior, come in and talk to me about the crossing at the funeral home that's, again, up the road.
Polk?
It's not, maybe it's Polk. Is it Polk? Yeah. And we looked at that one as well. We took our transportation engineer up there and kind of looked at that one from, again, a striped crosswalk. Don was not asking for a rapid flashing beacon. He was just asking for a striped crosswalk. And the reason for that is because the funeral home has parking across the street. And during, again, their funerals that, usually there's a large amount of pedestrian traffic that crosses there. And so I told him that we would look at that. We're not proposing what I've since called Don and talked to him about the fact that if you notice, if you've gone up 7th Street, and I could call it up on the screen here if needed be, but that particular intersection, you go up and then it flattens out and then takes off again, right?
Yes.
So the location where the crossing is at is in that kind of that little dip where, as a driver going up the hill, you'll never see that crosswalk. And I think that's dangerous. I think that's a dangerous location, and so did our consultant. But we did talk about the idea of adding some signage that better reflects that is a pedestrian crossing location. Remember, it doesn't have to be striped to be a legal pedestrian crossing. So we're moving forward with that kind of a solution as opposed to a striped crosswalk.
What problem is that trying to solve? Is it something to do with the services at the funeral home during busy times?
Right.
'Cause I don't see a lot of foot traffic through that. I travel that road every day a couple of times, and I don't see a lot of pedestrian traffic crossing there.
I think the only time there's much in the way of pedestrian traffic there is when there's a service that's either about to happen or ending.
9 or 10 in the morning, and
I don't know what
1 and 2 in the afternoon, something like that.
I don't know what the regulations are, but I would think maybe at schools they have the people with the little cross guards, to
manage that.
hold up traffic to manage that. If they get the I don't know what they need to get in terms of permits, but I would think that would be a much better solution than.
Well, even that, I think it would make sense to denote that that's a kind of a special crosswalk. So we're planning to do that with some signage that prior to the intersection that basically has the pedestrian there with maybe an arrow or something close to that. Because of the trees, street trees along there, we may not have the actual arrow because the sign will be preceding that, but we're talking about doing that. We also talked about when we restripe 7th to maybe try to incorporate a little bit of a refuge there. There's one, it just doesn't extend all the way down to the crosswalk, so some striping enhancements as well. So I wanted to mention that. Rocky, is this what you want to talk about? Did you want to talk about this topic as well? So anyway, the first one was informing you that we're moving forward with an acquisition of the rapid flashing beacon at 7th and John Adams, and my sense is we'll probably have that installed in 3 months or so.
The goal is to get it in prior to the end of the fiscal year.
Okay. And Rocky, did you want to comment on this? Why don't you come on?
Rocky Smith, Oregon City. On both intersections, I wanted to mention something. I was at a funeral a couple months ago, and attending a funeral. And as soon as I got in the door, I got hit with everyone talking about the intersection. It is for the crowds that attend funerals there, which is frequent, obviously. It is really bad to get across that street, and it probably doesn't warrant a major crosswalk, but I definitely think it's an important place to look at, and I've in the last several months have had a lot of people talk about it. The only viewpoint that I would have on the crossing at Singer Hill Cafe and the fire station is, especially if this is kind of the test run, those, a regular crosswalk in a visual sense is not as noticeable, I think, as the flashing yellow lights, which obviously is the lights are what's important to catch people's attention in terms of pedestrians, but in terms of a historic neighborhood and what we do to clutter up the street, I guess I would say, well, would we do something like that on Main Street that's a pretty visual corridor of a historic neighborhood? I think something like that needs to be thought about in just the design sense and the way it looks. Something farther up to where we're talking about the funeral parlor, if there was a signal with flashing lights, that's a whole different feel as you get up the hill into Malal Avenue than it is in that 7th Street historic corridor. And I don't know if that's come up, but I think we need to think about those type of things too. That's it.
One question.
Yeah,
too.
go ahead.
John, was there any thought about traffic backing up? Isn't that just one block past that signal? So if let's say in the commuter time, people going up 7th would be stopped because of the crosswalk, what do you envision, any backup back into that signalized intersection?
Well, that's pretty heavily traveled now. I think if a pedestrian, to be honest with you, a pedestrian has the right of way there anyway, so we're not talking about adding pedestrians. We're just talking about adding a safety feature for them. And so when the pedestrian's beyond the crosswalk there, then traffic can move through there.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't. There may be backup, but if there's backup, we're not doing anything to make that worse.
And the pedestrian signaling is not a stop. It's just
an amber
slow. It's an amber slow.
Yeah, but if there's a pedestrian in that crosswalk,
they stop.
They
But it's
can just stop. Right.
Yeah, it's a cautionary signal for drivers noticing there is a pedestrian about to enter into the right of way.
That's the whole issue. That's the whole purpose.
Yep.
For the car to
Yeah,
stop.
but it's not connected to any sort of signalization or red light or anything like that to actually physically control traffic. It is a cautionary signal for the commuters that a pedestrian is about to enter the right of way.
And I thought about what Bob mentioned, but my thought was that since it's just the amount of time for someone to come across, it probably wouldn't stop traffic long enough to become a major problem. But
as a driver,
yeah.
that's one thing I
could be
would
wrong on
really
that, too.
welcome to know, to be given a warning that there's a pedestrian about to cross. I would stop, because I don't want to be seeing somebody pushing a baby across it, and I have no warning about it. I think they'd be doing drivers a favor to give them that early warning device, so to speak.
And we definitely don't want to. To me, it makes a lot of sense. I know there's a signal within 1 block of that, but I definitely this is very subjective decision making, and I get that. So if we don't have support for that, then we would probably reconsider and maybe still buy the equipment, but leave it knowing that it's going to go in somewhere at some point in time, or maybe not. Maybe we'd cancel the order.
I just saw one of those going west on Burnside, down just past 3rd and Burn, right at the park blocks. And first I'd ever seen one. And boy, I tell you, it catches your attention. And the person that was crossing, I did not see them because there's a center on Burnside. And so I slowed down, like, what's going on? And all of a sudden, that person emerged from the middle section there, and it's like, wow, okay. So it is effective. I didn't hit him.
Did you see what they did in Lincoln City about 10 years ago? They had flags for people in the corner, and they picked it up and they walked across and put it in the holder.
Is that right?
The state didn't like it. They kept taking it away, and the city kept putting them back out.
I think we can do a little bit better than flags for it.
There you go.
Well, the thing that scares me is when you got two lanes, and the inside lane or one of the lanes stops. Pedestrian goes out. The other car doesn't see the pedestrian and keeps going. That just...
Because he's hid behind the car.
Yeah.
So you guys have raised good points. I mean, this is really a two lane, one lane in each direction. It's got I think it's got curb extension on one side, not on the other. We're not talking about the Singer Hill Cafe corners either. We're talking about the Carnegie and the corner across them.
Chiropractor, whatever it is.
I mean, I think there could be some argument that maybe there's a higher priority, but I think the higher priorities are at Holcomb and at Malala, and we're pursuing grant funding for both of those, and so it's a little different.
I think it's a good idea, John. I really do.
Yeah, I just recommend that you go ahead with what you have planned. It's the first one, and it'll give you a good idea of
It's
the
a
pros
proof
and
of life
cons.
project to see what
Yeah.
we can do and show you the design standard that we've been looking at. We have a product that we like. The question that you brought up about cars queuing up and somebody deciding I'm going to try and get around, the sighting on these, they're high enough that cars backed up, you'll be able to see them 2-3 cars deep, and then the angling on them, so you'll see the lights as you're coming in one direction, but the drivers in the opposing direction, the lights are turned at an oblique angle to them, so they see them as well. So you're getting it from both sides when you're coming towards that intersection. We looked at several different products, and we were pleased with these. We were getting at a price point that we think is very reasonable. And as John said, I think this one location is a very good proof of life project for us to show to the city this is something that we think we want to invest in other locations.
All right.
It's cheaper than a traffic light.
I wouldn't mind, given the debate and the discussion, a motion. Would you
Yes.
mind making a motion for proceeding?
Somebody else's turn.
I'll make a motion to install that flashing crossing light at that intersection.
Okay.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
All right, so we have a motion recommending that the Public Works install the traffic signal traffic cross there at 7th and John Adams. So do we have, let's take the vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No abstentions. Motion passes.
Thank you. The next one is we talked a fair amount about the idea of whether or not we could change the bylaws to include a member outside the city limits. And Kathy was good enough to kind of put this together. I got some email responses to this question from the city recorder and I know the library director. Can't remember. Parks must. I think that comment came from Nancy Ide actually. So there is some history of allowing membership on committees from outside the city. And the other thing he asked us to do was put together some pros and cons, and I don't believe we've done that. But this isn't really. I don't see it so much as a political body. I mean, I suppose there's that potential. Some of our other committees get kind of political, but this one hasn't. I don't see big disadvantages to this advisory group to be including, someone outside the city. I do think that we probably ought to limit that to maybe our zip code. but I can't even tell you right now how far outside the city that boundary is.
The zip code goes
way
almost
out.
to spring water.
How about our urban growth area?
Yeah,
I think
that's-
zip code would be easier. I mean, sorry, I didn't mean to-
We don't have, well, we can pull up the map again. The urban growth boundary isn't that much bigger
No,
Right.
than what,
it's very
and most of what it is large parcels. So,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to have maybe, you know, a couple hundred residents that might, you know, I think you're going to have a hard time finding interest.
Well, like in Park Place area, the urban growth boundary there are no houses in it.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's a few, but very, very few.
I mean, the zip code is what they have for the library board. I would, I guess I would argue that, you know, most of the people that live out and are, you know, if they're on this side of the rivers, Willamette and the Clackamas, they're probably using Oregon City's transportation system pretty heavily. So, I really didn't think through the pros and cons, though, to be honest with you. Didn't have a chance to get into that. So,
well, one of the pros by using the zip code would give us the ability to, you know, let's say that there is someone who is interested in transportation issues, that would give us the ability to, you know, tap their interest and you know, bring them into the committee.
Two zip codes, Beaver Creek and the Oregon City, because those two groups come in.
Yeah, I know that the library, that language just says 97045, I believe.
it does.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Well, it says.
It's in here.
It's
Oh,
in,
yeah, you're
it's
right.
in the memo.
97004.
I read it, but
There's two. Yeah, there's two in there. Two zip codes.
does that include the Beaver Creek?
Yeah, it's 45 and 04. 97004.
I don't know. I've never noticed the boundaries on that one, how far that goes, but
Quite a ways out. Yeah. So, you know, it gives us that flexibility. I'm not opposed to widening the boundary.
do we want to limit the number of members to
Yeah, I think
one
so.
or two, or I mean, how many of those outside?
Well, I'd recommend one because
One.
we have to also be sure those people know that if they're making recommendations for traffic outside of the city limits, we really can't do anything about it. And so if we had two or three, we would just be probably multiplying those potential requests that we can't do anything about. So I'd recommend one.
Okay.
At large.
At large.
Looking for a motion?
Looking for a motion.
I'll move we create one position outside the city limits, but limited to the 97045 zip code. One position.
And the 97004.
You don't have. You want them both? Okay, if you want them both.
Yeah, we'll just
97004.
adopt
as
the
well.
language of the library.
I'll have some discussion.
Yeah.
If indeed we do get somebody from outside the city, and they make suggestions or recommendations that we can't really incorporate into policy, that might be a little frustrating for them.
Could be. My thought was that these are people that are doing probably most of their shopping. Maybe they work in Oregon City. They're using the Oregon City, you know. So it's not necessarily that they would be representing their area, say out in Redland, but they would be giving input from their perspective on Oregon City transportation.
Yeah, I understand that, and I think that's a good idea if they understood that themselves.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that we're talking about the Oregon City transportation.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
if they would be willing to accept a position under those
Right, I think
limitations.
when the mayor interviews likely candidates,
Yeah.
he could throw that in there so they
Yeah,
understand
yeah.
that they're coming to add a voice to what's going on within the city limits, not add our voices to what's going on out there.
The thing that really impressed me is how much this city is impacted by traffic originating from outside the city.
Yes.
That all comes
My
through the
goodness.
hub. Spoke.
You know, Canby, Mobile, Lake Oswego coming this way. It's just unbelievable.
That's right, we are a hub. Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, any other discussion? Okay, call.
New motion?
Good.
New motion?
Yeah, we had a motion.
The one I made.
Oh, okay, yeah, you, that, yeah, okay.
Same motion, yeah.
Yeah.
We just had a little
We tried to
sidestep
sneak
there.
it by you.
But they're up for discussion, so why don't you?
So,
No, we
well,
discussed
what I
it.
was going to suggest was, this is going to require a resolution, so why don't you clarify in the bylaws that, I mean, you need to limit your scope, that issues dealt with are related to the city, or the city, within
Sure,
city
I'll,
limits.
I'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Well, no, what I'm saying is that way you're not going to have somebody from.
No, I understand that. So we made the motion. You said, let's add a little language in the resolution so that people understand that. And so I said, I'm agreeing. Just
Okay.
amend the motion to include that language you just suggested.
So right now it reads is to serve as an advisory body to provide advice to the City Commission, Planning Commission, and Urban Renewal Agency on development of a city transportation system and other transportation and land use matters relevant to the City of Oregon City, as well as guide preparation of transportation plans and programs, including the Neighborhood Traffic Management Plan. So, to me, there's potential for this group to talk about topics outside the city, if they affect the city. Do we want, are we saying that maybe we want to change that? I mean, the best representation that I have is Holly Lane. Holly Lane,
Yeah.
is one of those hot spots that's probably, we're seeing a lot of feedback from that community about our transportation system plan and the fact that we show a minor arterial through there. It could be that, once you have the at-large position, you may see somebody from Holly Lane that wants to, be on the committee and then would, bring that issue up, and it would be outside the city. And the way I read this, it provides us the latitude to maybe talk about those kinds of issues. If we change this, maybe we, to limit us to something inside the city, we might not be able to. So I don't know. I just think, we could find. I guess.
Well, I'm just saying, it's not. I don't necessarily think it's when you're interviewing people you want to make sure that they understand that it's city issues and we're not really going to talk about their street out in Beaver Creek. I don't think it should be kind of a verbal or an application comment. I think it should be something that's in the bylaws.
Streets in Oregon City, period.
Well, I mean, you can also talk about light rail and all the other things, but
Well, to me, the only issue that we're really dealing with here is, adding language that is in the library bylaws, and all it's doing is allowing an at-large member within a certain zip code or zip codes. I don't know that we need to change any of the other language in the bylaws at this time. Am I wrong on that? I mean, is it?
Now that after John read what he read, yeah, I guess I would concur. And I don't think we're going to have the big problems we're trying to
We're not going to
anticipate.
get
here.
hijacked by it. I mean, I don't think.
And is this a position that must be from outside the city, or one position may be?
Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah. John, that's got to be approved by the city commission, does it? Or
That's what Kathy is saying.
Yeah.
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 And since there's a precedent already for, again, the library language, we're not pressing the envelope here.
I think the library has it because of funding issues, right? The library is funded by 97045 and 97004.
Well, that's a good point.
City issues are funded by city.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the library area is much larger than the
Yeah,
city.
right.
Okay.
Exactly.
The people that they
That's
serve.
true.
Exactly. I think that that's,
But they're served by the county. They get their money, some of their money from the county.
yeah. I'm not saying that that's a reason not to do it. I'm just
Right,
saying,
right.
I think that that's a very clear distinction there.
I think that's a good point. Okay.
So the motion stands?
Good?
Yeah, good.
Motion stands. All in favor? Oh, no, we did that. Or did we?
No.
No, okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Abstentions? Motion passes. Sorry about that. Got lost in the weeds there.
The next issue that comes up, I think I can make a quick explanation on the striping on Highway 213 at Redland Road. The pictures that were provided are the wrong view. So I think we need to step back and try again.
You want to look at the ramps.
Pictures are of Highway 213.
What is it? What is it you're looking for?
Well, the issue was not the striping on Highway 213, but the striping on Redland Road approaching Highway 213.
So as you come up the hill to the
Right.
to the stoplight.
The striping on Highway 213 is just fine, but the striping on Redland Road, as you're going uphill, approaching the signals at Highway 213, the striping is very poor. Part of it. It's funny because some of it in the rain is just fine. Others of it, you can't hardly see the striping.
Still got the little yellow things sticking up.
I think we
Yeah,
need
it
to
wasn't completed.
try again on that.
I think, and we talked about this a little bit last time. Redland, that section of Redland Road is still striped with temporary striping.
Right.
And the contractor, the jug handler contractor's kind of moved back into town again, trying to finish up his punch list, and that's one of those punch list items. So if it's just the reflectivity, let's say, of the the long line striping, the other thing that they'll be adding is as you cross through Abernathy and Holcomb, that intersection there,
Right.
and you come up, and where those long line stripes split for the right turn lane, there will be legend for the right turn lane and legend for the left turn lane there. So that's the only addition, and then they'll be changing out those long line stripes with permanent striping, and I think it'll be better. So,
Well, if you can talk to them and maybe bring that issue up on their schedule somehow, because those really are dangerous. You can't hardly see them in the rain.
That work is actually because of the moisture in the air and the weather. They won't do that, and I want to say it's actually required to be done by ODOT in June. So that's kind of where we're at with that. Unless it's unsafe, but I'm not hearing it's unsafe. It's just not preferred.
Okay.
It takes quite a bit for paint to dry.
What's that?
It takes quite a bit of time to dry that paint when the weather's like this.
Well, I think
I've
it's got
seen
to
you
do
guys
with
do
just
crosswalks.
I think it's got more to do with the machines and yeah, the long term, adherence and the right weather conditions. So,
Is it paint or thermoplastic they're using there?
yeah, I believe that's thermoplastic.
Yeah, the thermoplastic, the conditions on the concrete have to be ideal for us to get the best adhesion, or it literally will start riveting up and just come right off. So
Well, I seen paint.
That makes sense.
Seen some of the cities putting paint on it for crosswalks, and they're out there with a propane torch trying to get the thing paint dry, just to dry the
Oh no, that's also thermoplastic.
Yeah.
It's comes in preformed. It's not paint drying. It's
No, this
getting
guy
it-
put paint out, and they sprayed it, and then they were trying to dry it one day. Up by Jackson's campus.
Okay, so let's move on to 6E if we can, and that is the South End Road Speed Zone application.
So it's in. I think that's all it's in and posted and.
Yeah, the signs were put up last week, and the reduced speed zone has been implemented throughout the south end intersections in that area.
Excellent.
And we've received our first complaint.
What, oh, you did already?
Yes.
Take it back out.
We want 55.
Rip it up.
Okay, any other discussion on that before we move on to 6F? Crosswalk at Downtown Transit Center.
Yeah. So, we've talked. I didn't get a chance to connect with Eric Wargren, but
I spoke to him about this.
Did you
as well.
talk?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I can give you a little background on this. It's an issue we're continuing investigation because there are multiple agencies now that this is having to move towards. The area that you were concerned about with causing site obstructions from the TriMet buses queuing up in that line, when that area was redeveloped and all the original plans were put in, that was actually dedicated specifically for the purpose of TriMet queuing in those areas. And there are agreements that the city has signed that is dedicating those lanes for the TriMet buses. So to try and do something along that would require some significant work on the legal side with TriMet and trying to get them to see what we could do. Eric is in the process. We do have some plans for some improvements along that intersection, but unfortunately those plans are not, there's no definitive timeline as to when the implementation and when the funding will come into line. What that does call for is considering a raised intersection for pedestrian walk there. What I refer to where I came from as a speed table, slightly larger than a speed hump. It's actually your crosswalk sits at the flat surface of this plateau. That's what they were considering for that location. For the short term, what we're looking at is the commuter island that's there for the Canby shuttle is possibly considering doing a shift of the crosswalk to that location. So when pedestrians are trying to cross, they can queue up behind the Canby bus, but they still have enough sight line clearance to where the TriMet buses are queuing up. So we're not eliminating the issue, but we're giving the pedestrians a bit more sight line, that sight triangle, to give them an opportunity to see if something is coming, so they're not just trying to stick their head around the corner of a queued up bus. We have to work with the Canby shuttle to see if that's something that's possible. So I've made one phone call to that agency trying to see if we could sit down and have a discussion. I haven't received a reply yet, but we are working on the subject, and we'll get you guys an answer hopefully by the next TAC meeting.
Fair enough.
I have another suggestion on that. Last Friday when I went by there, the bus parked at that crossing was parked back about 15 feet. And if you could communicate with TriMet and ask them to maybe put a stripe on the sidewalk and instruct their bus drivers to put their front bumper at that point, that proves to me that they can park a little bit further back from that.
And they can, and it's really dictated by the schedule of the buses and how many that they have queuing up. I'm assuming at the time that you were present, there wasn't a secondary bus queued up behind the initial bus, and the bus drivers will try and, for their own safety, try and stay as far away from the intersection as possible when they don't have a secondary bus queuing up behind them. But when they get a secondary bus coming in, they have to move forward to allow both those buses to get as close to the curb for any riders to embark or disembark. So that would seem like an effective approach, but it really depends on the level of congestion and buses that they have within the queue. But within the language of the agreement that we have with TriMet for that center, that entire area is dedicated to them, and that was the initial intent. So there's a lot of legal implications that we'd have to do and try to see about changing any of that. The easier consideration may be trying to take a look at some alternatives for relocating the actual located striped walking area or crosswalk area.
Thank you. It was a good report. Okay, TSP update.
And then you've got an extra 60 feet of site clearance.
Okay, so we've had our second work session with the Planning Commission. First one was just a presentation on the TSP and kind of some of the things that you're well informed about. The second one was specific to the code changes that. So that was last night until about 10 o'clock last night. So it was a late night. He talked about the code amendments, and that's got a lot more to do with planning and some of the work that they're doing to implement the transportation system plan. Rob, you were there. You sat through most of that. Nodded off a little bit, did you? I don't know. I missed that.
Put my hat on backwards.
I didn't catch that, but I felt like that sometimes. I think the biggest issue was the parking, downtown parking. They're proposing some changes to, reduce the parking requirement for a couple of districts. One is the Main Street area, and they had a map of that, and the other's up that goes up the 7th Street corridor, and in the McLaughlin neighborhood. And so they're proposing a 50% reduction in the parking requirement for any new development in that downtown area, and 35% reduction in the parking requirement for anything in the McLaughlin neighborhood. And I can't speak to that in an informed way. I mean, I heard what I heard, but I don't have the facts for that. But anyway, we're moving through that process. The next one is next Monday. That'll actually be the first public hearing.
Yes.
I can't remember the dates for the other ones, but there's 5 or 6 meetings coming up between the Planning Commission and the City Commission. So that's moving forward.
Just for the sake of the other committee members, if you aren't, what code enforcement is trying to do, in my understanding, John, check me if I'm wrong, but they're trying to make it easier for new business or additional business to come into the downtown corridor. Right now, the requirements, so if you build a new, let's say apartments, there are codes that say if you build an apartment, if it's a studio, you have to have 1 space or 0.75 space. And then if you have a business, you have to have 4. If you have an office space that you're building, you need 2.75 parking spaces per square foot. So there are all these regulations. Well, what's happening, from what I understand, is that businesses are coming in and saying, well, these are onerous. They're too high for an urban area, and so they have to apply for not a waiver. What's
a variance?
A variance. Thank you. And so they're just saying, look, we want to try to make it as easy as possible for new business or additional business, and put those into more of an urban ratio, the 50%. The rub is, though, that business owners downtown are, now they're seeing that potentially more spaces could be taken from them, and so I think that's, am I kind of okay there on that?
Yeah, it's a balance.
It's a balance.
And it's a balance. I mean, what we heard from McLaughlin was as parking gets tighter and tighter downtown, employees and other people start parking up in the neighborhoods, and it's kind of a domino effect with regard to parking concerns. But at the same time, we're trying to we want to see we do think we hear from the community that they're interested in seeing jobs and they're interested in seeing development. So what's that balance? Sounds like at least from the planning perspective, they think that's a reduction in the parking requirement of 50% for downtown. So
yeah. And what that would do, at least according to the game plan, would be, phase 1 would be to reduce those parking codes. Then that would attract new business, more jobs, raise the property values, more tax increment, and then in phase 2 you'd be able to take those tax increments and build more permanent solution, multi-level parking garage, smart park, whatever it may be. At least that's kind of what I heard. So we'll see.
I think we've got to be prepared for the law of unintended consequences, because the best laid plans and mice and men. And I tell you, the most influential item that we have to deal with in any community when it comes to planning is not just land use, but what kind of traffic it generates. Traffic, traffic, traffic. It boils down to safety. You get one person killed in a sidewalk because of this, that, and the other thing. It adds up. It has an impact on public confidence, and I'm all for safe streets. I really am. And this document that we're talking about, this traffic improvement system, is amazing. I mean, the impact it's going to have on this community, just for the improvements, the dollar value on the improvements of highways and infrastructure and stuff like that is unbelievable. I mean, it's over $100 million, and the impact it's going to have on neighborhoods and the livability of neighborhoods is amazing. And I don't know if the public at large understands this, what we're about to adopt.
Probably not. Yeah, fortunately.
Not that it's a bad thing. I'm not saying that.
Right.
It's just be prepared.
Yeah. Okay. Any other comments or input there?
Let me jump in for a second if I could, please. When I went to, I guess it was the open house, and looked at some of the additions there, the language changes, the code changes, I had a question of John, because I don't think we had spent time as a committee looking at, we were looking at a lot of other things. And my basic question was, if you make these changes, does that have a financial impact on development? And it's just a basic question, and has staff had an opportunity? Has anybody asked them to do some kind of rough estimate? So when you look at the increased street or right-of-way widths that are listed there, and fortunately they're not significant, but so I mean, just playing it real simple, our old requirement for right-of-way was 60 feet and now it's 75, then that's going to impact development. So have we had any discussions along that line to show that we've kind of done our homework and we're prepared to respond to that kind of question that comes up?
And I don't have an answer for that, but it was one of the questions that I've added to my notes of questions that I need to forward.
Is there a reasonable or a relatively easy way to get a crack at that, or is it just kind of pretty complex? And
Well, I suspect there's some complexities to it, but I think the right one to confirm exactly what that means is the DKS, the consultants.
okay,
do
good,
it.
good.
I mean, there's things from, well, you remember, I think, intersection spacing standards.
Yeah.
You know, there's pedestrian connectivity requirements, so that if you've got a dead end street, a cul-de-sac or something, how do you get pedestrians from the end of that cul-de-sac to somewhere else so that there's good connectivity? Maybe wider street sections, requirements for driveways, in terms of how far driveways can be from intersections, and then the width piece, how wide is the boulevard? So those all have impacts on new development, but in theory, they make the world a better place, right? That's the theory.
Correct.
Yeah. That's what Bob was alluding to. So, okay. Any other comments? Thanks, John, for the update on that. And
I think they were asking for a motion.
Were you asking for a motion?
I make stuff up as I go along.
You too.
I thought we did.
Yeah.
Well, I think it would be good. I mean, we've been talking about this. At some point, we need to get a motion. It makes sense to get a motion from this committee to support or not the TAC. I mean, the TSP.
So I'd like to just say that we can analyze this to death, and we can all be dead by the time we get through analyzing it. And I'd like to make a motion to approve the draft of the TSP.
Okay. Have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay. Any discussion?
I'm just going to abstain. I'm really not that opposed to it, but I'm going to abstain on this vote.
Okay. John, what is the? Are you looking for a motion for us to recommend?
I guess Martin was just raising that point. You're not really approving that. Maybe you're supporting that.
Because there's still the draft. There's still more work to be done before it's approved by the commission. We're saying that we support it to this point.
Yeah, to this point.
That the work
You
done
support the
is-
preliminary recommendations that are posed within the report, because it's really not an approval question right now.
My, the recommended motion, actually, just like in a city commission report, I put a recommended motion in here, accept the January 2013 Oregon City TSP as drafted, and recommend that the city commission adopt it.
John, let me ask you a question of procedure. Right now, this is the same document that is before the planning commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Is it appropriate for this committee to I don't like to use the word preempt because it came to this committee first.
Mm-hmm.
So as it has come to this committee in its present form, is it appropriate for us to make a motion before the planning commission has finished its review? Should they be making a motion separately or combined, or how would that work?
That is a good question. I think the legislative approval process is, that's designated through an ORS, and it doesn't necessarily include this committee approval process. It includes the planning commission and a certain number of hearings and public meetings with the planning commission, and then they work with the city commission on that approval, and the city commission ultimately makes the approval. So I don't necessarily see a motion by this group to adopt that. Part of it just is timing of meetings. I think that we don't have the time to, if we miss it this time, I think there's still meetings that we could provide a motion recommending adoption. But I think it'd be good to get a recommendation before even the planning commission. They may have an opportunity. If we didn't have a motion tonight, we could probably get before the planning commission. A copy of that recommendation so that they know that at least they have the transportation advisory committees.
Well, I'm just trying to protect the status of this committee, because if this committee has no voice in what the planning commission is doing, what's the purpose of this committee?
Well, and we are an advisory committee, so the motion would say to them that we've looked at this and we've as Bob said, we could study it until the cows come home, but we've looked at this, and our recommendation is that the work to this point we support and want to move forward.
And I think I don't know how much the planning commission asks. I haven't heard them ask yet whether or not the transportation advisory committee has approved it yet before their vote, or whether they will. Without us raising that question, I guess with them they may not. But the city commission probably will, because the city commission has been more recently, and I think that's got to do with the work that you folks have been doing, is pretty keen to the fact that they've got this other advisory body out there that might not be part of the legislative approval process as written by the state, but that it's a very important committee and it's done some important committee work, some of which is going to be in the next topic, which is our report, which talks about the time we've spent reviewing the transportation system plan. So I guess I think there's strong value in a motion from this committee recommending approval, Could it happen in our April meeting? I think it could. My recollection of the calendar of meetings is that, it still wouldn't be too late. But I think, if this committee will make that recommendation, we'll try and share that with the Planning Commission first, and then at the meeting with the City Commission, we'll share that as well. And maybe it makes sense to have someone from this committee at the first public hearing. I mean, you're on the Planning Commission.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know if that's the appropriate way to raise it to them, or if it makes sense to have one of the other members come and actually testify.
Well, I'm kind of surprised that it hasn't been raised at the Planning Commission, and shame on me for not doing it, because I want us to share and cooperate. And I think that this motion is appropriate. It's given in the spirit of good faith and what have you, because we're all approaching it, as advisory committees. So I'm for the motion, and I would be glad to act as liaison, if you will, just to explain that we're not trying to trump them or anything like that. We just thought, as a matter of procedure, we ought to go on record as representing our efforts here tonight,
right,
or in the past several months. So I think it's appropriate in that spirit. Is that, what do you think, John? Is
I agree.
Okay. All right.
Okay, so we have a motion, we have a second, we've discussed it. We want to recommend our support for the TSP plan, the TSP up to this point, and so call for the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstained? Motion carries. All right, and now those who made the motion and then the second are going to be the ones that get to go to the 2012 annual TAC report and give a report on for our committee. So that's coming up. When is that, John?
Let's see.
April 17th.
April 17th. Okay. And what will be entailed in that? I mean, will we be expected, our committee will be expected, a representative to come and give a presentation? What?
The only one I've actually seen personally is the Parks Advisory Committee. They've come and they really just talk through their accomplishments and maybe talk through some of their plans for the future. They might not go through the list in its entirety. They might focus on a few of the key items. But it was just come to a city commission meeting and take more than you get more than your 3 minutes. But you don't have to take more than that. But they'll allow you to do a committee report, and so it really is kind of up to this committee about what they want to report. And I think last meeting you asked us to put something together, and Kathy has done that.
Yes.
And I read it, and I thought, man, that's a lot of things. But other than that, I didn't,
That's because we're so good.
That's right.
That's right.
And good looking.
Thank you.
And modest.
Yeah.
And modest, yeah.
Is there any ribbon cutting involved in this? I mean, if there's ribbon cutting, I'd like to.
We can do one
be
for the
involved in it.
crosswalks for you at 7th and Adams.
There you go. There you go. Okay, well, I'm willing to do that, but if we can discuss amongst ourselves, and if we'd like to tag team or someone would like to do that, yeah.
No,
Okay.
I think it's appropriate that our chairman do that, really.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. But I expect you all to be there.
Backing you up.
Excuse me?
April
Where were they when you had to?
That's right.
When I was a gun,
I tried.
my heart was going.
I was on my deathbed, Bob. I would have been there for you. April 17th, what day is that? Is that
It's a Wednesday.
Wednesday. meetings.
Yeah, you have
Well,
meetings.
yes, the commission meetings.
The TAC meeting is Tuesday the 16th, and the commission meeting is Wednesday the 17th.
Yes.
And is it already, do I need to let that Nancy, I know that, or
No,
did you already get it?
they told us.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I think I told them. So,
Oh, you told them?
I just couldn't.
You told
remember.
them, and then.
I told
So-
them and they told us.
So,
Okay.
Blaine,
Mm-hmm.
how do you want to finalize this report? Do you want me to send it to you in a Word document?
That would be great. I will pour through it word by word.
Okay.
And then I will practice my speech here at our next at our April meeting.
So I drafted something, and then I added Bob LaSalle's. Bob had basically how the TAC could support the city commission
Yes.
goals. So I added that section.
Okay.
So I'll send it to you in a Word document.
That'd be great. And then that's a lot more than we'll fit into 3 minutes. That goes by pretty quick. So I'll have to whittle that
You'll have
down.
more than 3 minutes.
More than 3 minutes.
You don't
I
have to
think-
go over the whole report, but
Yeah.
I think you presented and.
Yep. And I'll draft it out to everyone so you can see it. Okay.
You got to admit, this committee knows how to have fun.
And we want a pay raise too. I'm going to bring that up.
that's a
Yeah,
good idea.
100%
I second that motion.
I just want some ink for my printer to print these reports out.
There you go. Okay.
We'll give you the same amount we collect in trolley fare.
All right. If there's nothing else, we'll move to the Oregon Passenger Rail.
So, I just asked Kathy last minute to add this to the agenda. Well, actually, she added it to the agenda, but I didn't have the attachment available, so I'm passing that around. There's a public involvement company who's working for the state by the name of JLA Public Involvement, and they're working on this. Really, all the community advisory and stakeholder groups that are involved with the Oregon Passenger Rail project, and they sent me an email first, and I talked to them after that, and they said we want to establish a community advisory group. We want this to be comprised of people who really know the lay of the land, and not just through Oregon City. I think, for probably be in the county area. They expect to have representatives from not just Oregon City, but Milwaukee and Gladstone and probably Clackamas County and as well. But they're narrowing their search of alignments for this passenger rail, and for the most part, Oregon City's kind of on the map in several of those alignments. They all kind of converge and go through Oregon City because it's the bottleneck, I would say, when you talk about alignments for rail. And so, as they talk through these alternatives, they would like a community advisory group of informed people. This isn't a political body that we're talking about here. There's already those groups that are like advisory groups for this project, and this is a little bit different than that. It's one meeting right now that they think they may have a secondary meeting, and I think it would be appropriate to have, they want 4 or 5 representatives. I think it would be appropriate to have at least one from the TAC. The other groups, would be probably the Natural Resource Advisory Committee. There might be somebody that would make sense to have on the group. Maybe somebody from the downtown, somebody from, what am I thinking? CIC. So I guess what I was wanting to do was kind of share the purpose statement. Again, this isn't a powerhouse role here, but it's I think an important role to provide on the ground kind of feedback. So if you're familiar with Oregon City and if you're familiar with Clackamas County, they'd like to. I guess I'd like to get somebody from this group to sit in at least this one meeting, maybe 2 meetings.
I've been meeting with Amtrak and ODOT and also AORTA, which is the Association of Rail and Transit Advocates, regarding the train depot and with the Marketplace Bistro going in there. So it's I'd be willing to go. I mean, it's a natural fit, and I've talked to several people about the rail alignment, and so. But others, if you'd like to go along and be
You're
part of
already
that.
on there.
Okay, I am. Boy, they already assigned me.
Back of
First
the
three
page.
bikes is listed
Okay.
on
Oh
there.
wow. Okay.
You got your own seat.
Well,
There you
they're these are just kind of suggestions. I think it's no different than
Fits right in.
Fits right in.
But they did mention that as a good kind of recommendation for who.
But you can fill a lot of, or wear a lot of hats.
Yeah.
Fill a
Yeah.
lot of these roles.
Yeah. But if others would like to come along and be a part of that, that would be great.
Okay, so this doesn't have to be anything official. I don't need a motion on this, but I just right now should I just put down Blaine's name as someone, and we'll be in touch on that, Blaine.
Yes. Okay. McLaughlin Boulevard Enhancement Project.
I think we wrote this up. I'm not sure, Bob, that there's been any committee meetings since last month on this one, so there might not be much to report on this topic.
No, I don't think there has.
Right. I think they're hoping to schedule for another
Yeah.
their 30% design advisory group meeting in April.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not sure that date's been set, so that's about the limit. They're working on the 30% design package right now.
Okay. So then, South End Concept Plan.
Okay, on February 27th, we had another open house down at the McLaughlin School down there, and again, very good attendance, close to or over 100 people were in attendance, and they broke everybody into tables of a maximum of 8 people per table, and they had a huge map of the South End concept area, and all these little pieces of paper and pieces of string, and you could, this color represented a community center, and this color represented maybe a church, and this represented high-density housing, the whole thing. And green string represented trails, and so all these tables put their own ideas on these maps, and then glued or taped them down, and then hung them on the wall, and they were all judged, and it was kind of fun. And it was kind of interesting how many different ideas came from those, and so they're going to take, they took those maps, like the planning department, and they're going to compile, I guess, the best of the West, or whatever you want to call it, taking everybody's ideas, and they're doing a good job of that. They also provided us with a compilation of all the comments they've received at the open houses and presentations to different organizations and all the outreach that they've been doing of the South End Concept Plan. And there are actually 537 comments about various issues in the South End Concept area. And 23% of those comments address transportation of one kind or another, transportation issues. So that's quite a number for one subject. So people are really concerned out there. So it's moving along.
And just to dovetail on what Mr. LaSalle said, I attended that meeting myself. I've been fortunate to participate in events like that in the past. I'm unfortunate to be married to an urban planner, so I get dragged to a lot of those. It's like, we need extra bodies to man a table. I'm like, sure. But that was a very well-run, we call them charrettes. It's a working session. There were informed individuals running each of those tables, giving people enough information as to this is what we want you to do with it, but not telling you how the results should look. And the good thing is at the end, the community feels as if we've been stakeholders and have participated in the process. And the one thing I did catch is when everyone put everything up, the commonality amongst all the different tables, these people weren't speaking to one another, they were just working amongst their table. When they put everything up, you see this thread that tends to run through all of the different tables' responses to what they wanted to see. And that's what the consultant will be looking for, is those common threads that will paint a picture of what they want the community to look like.
Yeah.
I think I drove by the school that night. I'd never seen that many vehicles parked at John McLaughlin.
You thought it was a high school football game.
Yeah, I mean, I've been there through their auctions and their different events, and I've never seen that many vehicles parked.
Well, I would compare the attendance as near the same as our first open house we had.
What would you say, about 120, 130 people there maybe?
Well, I'd say you're right around 100.
Yeah.
Yeah. Give or take 10 or 15. Yeah.
Maybe I went by on a different night, but I don't know.
Well, it sounds like it was a real positive meeting. I had one person tell me that, people put stickers on different options or whatever, and one of the options that received the most number of stickers was "do nothing, leave it as it is." I don't know if that, I was thinking based on that comment, which I didn't follow up and ask more questions, that there's a negativity about the South End concept, but what I'm hearing here is actually a very well run.
Well, the do nothing option is always an option. It may not be the preferred by certain members, but any of these results, even when we do engineering studies, the do nothing option is something that has to be considered. For some of the residents, that may be, their defined approach is things are fine the way they are. But I think doing this inclusive process where everybody gets to voice, and then they look for common themes and come up with something that is moving the community in forward progress,
right,
but still trying to address all of the concerns. So the NIMBYs or the people who decide, the do nothing option is what we prefer, maybe they keep the progress from being as progressive, but there's still some movement towards a common theme.
Some of them, when they see the next phase of planning with everybody's input, may say,
Yeah, they can temper
Not so
the
bad.
approach. It's like, okay, we didn't want all of this,
right,
but we did give in a little bit. And as long as you're including them within the discussion, I think a lot of the people who just said, the NIMBYs and the people who would rather do the do nothing option, they feel I was included, I put out my opinion, and I didn't get everything I wanted, but I got some of it.
So overall, you sense a more of a positive
The table I sat at, there was a lot of good discussion.
excitement. Good.
Well, and reading all those 537 comments, it's generally pretty positive, but it runs the whole gamut of don't change anything up to I want to be able to develop my property.
It will be a bell curve.
Everything in between.
Yeah, it will be a very distinct bell curve. Yeah. You'll have the do nothings to the we need to be, all the way over here. So somewhere along that line is where you're hoping the answers come out.
A life of planning. Okay. Well, thanks for that update. And do we have any other anything to add to the good of the order? John, you had something you wanted to add to the agenda?
Well, I just want to make sure, again, sometimes we do these little things and we don't kind of share with the proper groups, and I think this one is probably good for you folks to know about.
This is at Gaffney Lane.
Yeah, I just want to show kind of what we're thinking here, and let's see, what do I want to do? Get the
Martin put them away. How do you get them back?
Oh, there you go.
Great. What did we do here, Martin? Let's see.
I don't know. I'm sorry.
the street view?
It looks like it's not connecting to the server.
It's just a different view.
Weird view.
I think isn't this where the jog is?
How do I get back? Okay, sorry, we're gonna just. Sometimes I know that program, but most of the time, if it doesn't, it's new enough to where I haven't spent enough time. Kathy tells me I can just go in here and reload it, see if it works. Sorry.
No, they don't even have solitaire on here. What's up with that?
What would we do, John, without the ladies to keep us in line, huh?
I'll do it this way. How's that?
There you go.
That's not it.
Oh, yeah, you're close. There you
Okay.
go. Yep, you're there.
So, familiar with Gaffney Lane's elementary school and Gaffney Lane?
Yep, you're heading toward Fred Meyer
Right
now.
knows where we're at. We're headed into town at this point. Yeah, towards Fred Meyer. So there's this piece of property that sits back here that the city bought a couple of years ago just for the purpose of hopefully fixing the connectivity problems. So as we kind of move forward, progress through here a little bit, you'll see, and I can come from the other side, but there's no sidewalk on this side. So, from a parent or a child's perspective, trying to get to the school, it's not an easy thing to do. And this sidewalk ends here with basically somebody's yard. So there is some bit of a pathway that people have maneuvered through here, but it's definitely that close to a school. It's kind of, I guess we see it as something that should be fixed. And if we can find the funding to do that, we're trying to allocate funding for that. Right now we're in the budget hacking mode to kind of get our wish list to match our revenues. And so we're usually, when we make those cuts to our budget, we look at capital and projects like these that maybe, it's been working this way for a long time. It's probably, there might be a higher demand, but anyway, what we're going to do is a small concept study to figure out what kind of solutions we can come up with for safer pedestrian. And this house, which we now own, is really right. If you could look down the sidewalk, that sidewalk is about 2 feet off the face of the house. So is there a different section alignment that still gets us good pedestrian connectivity and enough road width to have a nice piece of roadway there? And the other thing I've heard this from one very vocal person who you all know, William Gifford. He said, the one thing I like about that area is it kind of acts like a speed feature that kind of slows traffic down because it gets so narrow through there. So one of the things that I was thinking we should look at is maybe instead of pressing the sidewalk all the way out to the limits like it does on either end, maybe there's a meandering sidewalk with maybe a major curb extension, maybe a crosswalk feature that kind of would do a little bit of both. So right now we're planning to hire a consultant to kind of do some field survey and produce a couple of concept drawings that we could kind of consider, and maybe some cost estimates so that we can better budget for this kind of stuff. So that's just wanted to let you know that's kind of what's coming up on this.
I think that'd be a great improvement.
Yeah. Low-hanging fruit on these improvements.
Yep. Especially so close to the school, and getting that connectivity would be great on the sidewalks.
So you bought the house,
We bought that house, yeah.
and then you can sell it. Sell it and have somebody
Move
it.
When it went up for sale, one of the city residents told us about it. Said, "Hey, that property's up for sale. You should buy it." So Nancy Crashar and I were involved in that process.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Before we adjourn, I think Kathy and I had an email exchange, and I had this suggestion on the agenda items. You put a label on there, like staff is looking for action, or it's just
Yes.
informational. Kathy, you'd listed 4 possible phrases to use there in that email you sent me. Do you have yours handy?
I will.
Discussion only was one of them, report, or information only.
Yeah.
Wait, and so where are you looking to see it, though?
You sent your last email to me.
Yeah, no.
You listed 4, didn't you? Possible phrases.
Yeah, they are discussion only, informational, decision required, and update.
That way, when we're reading it, it gives us a little better focus on what the staff is hoping for. And
Right.
they don't have to be perfect. We can change them later if we need to change them, but give us some guidelines there.
So just, and as I said, I cannot put it in the title. Like Oregon City's trolley program was the title of item 6A.
Yeah.
I can put it in on the staff report, those one-page sheets that are in there. But I'm not sure I'm not sure if you guys are used to looking at those.
So let's take 6A trolley there.
Okay.
You have staff and you have attachments, and you could say staff request, and then put one of those 4 words there or something like that.
I can't.
You can't even do it down there.
Nope. I can't do it on the agenda
Okay.
unless I make it part of the title. Oregon City's trolley program,
Parentheses?
parentheses, if you want.
I don't know. It's easier to see it there than get it all the way to the staff report, right? We can try it, and if you
How
don't
about
like
if we
it,
just try it?
yeah, let's try it. And
Okay.
It'll show up in both if you put it there, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Show up everywhere.
So that means, though, you need to know. The problem we have, to be honest with you, is Kathy does an outstanding job with this, but sometimes on that Friday or Thursday, especially if I'm out of town, or it's a fair amount of
This
effort.
evolved from me volunteering to go to a meeting because Nancy Crashar was writing notes. So I volunteered. And now all of a sudden, I'm putting the packets together.
Yeah.
At the last minute. I'm still doing it.
That's the award you get.
So, John and Kathy, I'd suggest if you haven't made a decision, just put a question mark in the parentheses.
Yeah.
Well, and this is, section 6 says discussion items, and so that lays out the general, that these items, there may be an update, information given, then discussion. I think what would be important for me is to know, are
you looking for action?
Are you looking
motion?
for a motion?
Yeah.
That would be helpful to know. But a lot of times you may not even know that. I don't know.
Well, I would say, as a new staff member for this committee, and really having an organized, you guys are good. You've kind of taught me that motions matter, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they bring some conclusion to this. So we didn't do motions much, before. Blaine, we hadn't done a lot of motions.
Well, it gives this committee credibility.
I think you're right.
And if we don't have any authority, what are we doing here?
Yeah,
Really?
you do have authority.
Yeah.
But all I'm saying is so that didn't used to happen. I'm liking that more and more. The more I think about it, it's kind of like, I get that.
John, you
And,
thoughts on that?
Well, and as the item comes up, and you've changed your mind about the category,
Yeah. Just,
all you have to do is tell us.
Yeah.
It's not going to be cast in stone.
Right.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we'll do it. Yeah,
And that's
so we're
something
not-
I could even, as I go down through the agenda, I can say, are we looking for, just preemptively say, okay, we're moving this item. Are we looking for a motion? Just general discussion, and just kind of get direction from you as to what you're looking for.
Yep.
It's okay. We're gonna schedule meetings like 2 weeks before and
right.
set up the agenda.
There you go.
There you go.
And you'll give John direction.
Yeah, Kathy, you'll
No,
get
no, no.
you'll get him disciplined yet.
Martin's going to fix everything. That's what's going to happen.
Well, whatever we do, we don't want to add more to your plate than you already have. So whatever you do, don't. You know what I'm trying to say.
Don't invent work.
The other piece of advice I'll give this committee is when you have a police officer in the room and in front of you, we get so much discussion about lack of enforcement. Don't miss those opportunities because I think he got a good earful tonight. If he was listening, and I did talk to the city's chief in our department head meeting today, just kind of feeling like and he did it. Just he feels like it's a resource issue. We don't really have a traffic, enforcement officer at this point, and. So, but I hear that pretty regularly, and there is this desire to get more police, 3 more police, which is going to require some, funding change. And,
So that's what's happening in the trolley, huh? No.
Don't think it hasn't gone across my mind that I was going against the police recommendations on the trolley issue the other night.
Yeah, they've got your name now.
I guess so.
You're going to be getting tickets left and right.
But I hear that, but part of the problem is Public Works shows up for more of these community meetings than typically, the police do. I know the police have been going to neighborhood meetings, and but I sit through the TAC meetings, and now with the TSP, there's a lot of open houses, and there's sometimes the assumption is Public Works doesn't get to carry guns or write tickets. Bottom line, we can put up signs, and we can do our best to manage traffic through speed zones and traffic impact studies, but there's this enforcement piece too.
Yeah.
And I think the community wants to if police are in the room, they usually press them pretty hard, I think. But if they're not, then they press Public Works, and I'm feeling like we're about as far out there as we can get with regard to what we can do. We can buy a few more speed monitoring signs.
Right.
We can put up we can do speed studies or ask the state to reduce speeds, but like tonight's issue, I think that's about enforcement, not necessarily about how it's signed, I believe.
John is raising a good point, because at the planning commission level, when we hear land use applications and things like that, 90% of the comments are traffic from the neighborhood. You're filling more density, and it's making our streets, which are inadequate, and it's always speed, and it's always an enforcement issue. And we really don't have anybody to look to and say, hey, give us a hand here. Because we're all working together, so to speak. But John makes a good point. The police are out there doing other things. And part of it is lack of manpower and stuff like that. But, I'll tell you, traffic. In this town, Milwaukee, any town you go to, it's always traffic.
We say we're adding more houses, but we're not adding police to take care of those houses.
Yeah, and we're not able to improve our transportation system because we do it on a checkerboard system. And John made the point the other night that you work with willing landowners, property stakeholders, what have you. If they're not willing to work with you, it's tough. We're dealing with a small subdivision right now, and you'd think we're starting World War III. Over traffic and drainage and stuff like that. But this committee here, believe you me, is an important committee. It really is. And like John says, we're used to working with motions and things like that. That's flexing your muscles here at this level. I think that the city commission is looking for this committee to give them some backup and direction.
Well, I do. Along that one, recognize John has come to this committee and has a lot of experience in city management, and we've benefited from that. So I really appreciate all your input. So.
One thing I'll add to Mr. Mahoney's statement is you do have authority and power. You had an entire neighborhood show up here today to ask you to direct us to research an issue. That neighborhood can call us several times throughout a week, and we can, not intentionally, but sometimes we've got a lot of stuff on our plate, and we don't necessarily put all of our resources out there for every call that we get. But when they come here, you're the directional body that gives us, can you guys look at this and give us back a report? So next month, that neighborhood will be getting an answer from us through you.
I was encouraged with both of your responses to that. I really was. Because those people really do need some help.
Yeah.
Really.
Right.
And that
Did a
street,
nice job.
And that street they're talking about is a quick way to get to Beaver Creek Road to get around the school zone on Beaver Creek.
But they live right next to a high school.
Yeah.
And those high school kids just got their brand new license.
Yep.
I've got a nephew that just got his.
Ready
Turned
to
16
go?
last weekend. God, he's got his license already.
Yeah. Unreal.
All right.
Well, good work, everyone. And so this is, I think, to date, maybe our longest TAC meeting.
Go for the record.
Well, there's two records tonight. The most people that showed up for public comment, and there may be a correlation there.
And we made our way through it.
Yeah, good work, everyone. Thank you. You're adjourned.
Hit the